On this very special episode of the Tennis Files podcast, we are celebrating 200 episodes by featuring clips from 11 of the most downloaded interviews and discussions over the years on the show. Hello and welcome to episode 200. I'm so glad that you could join me for this very special episode. I'm really glad that we have made it to episode 200, and I'm looking very much forward to 300, 400, 500, and beyond, knock on wood. But for today, as I mentioned, I've got for you 11 or clips from 11 of the most downloaded episodes on the show from the past couple of years, from around episodes 100 to 200, because I did an episode 100 in a similar format by going through the top downloaded episodes of the first 100 shows. And for this one, I went through the top downloaded episodes for around 100 to 200. Or I guess 101 to 199, something like that. But in any case, they are excellent. I went through, each one and picked out portions of each one that I thought would bring you a lot of value. So I'm obviously not, starting with the intro or anything like that of each episode. I just go into the middle, and I think that you'll get a lot of great value out of it. I'll just reel off the names real quick in the episode. So here it is. It's first one is Jorge Capestany. Then we've got Emilio Sanchez. And then we've got a 7 do's and don'ts for doubles players. So you'll hear a couple of those. We've got Edgar Giffenig, Taylor Dent, Dean Hollingworth, Todd Widom, Nick Bollettieri, Gregg Rick Macci, and Marcus Willis. So if you would like to listen to the full-length episodes of any of these podcasts for free, of course, you can just click on the link included in the show notes. So wherever you're listening to this episode, you're likely going to see a show notes description of the episode, a very brief one, along with the links. And just in case you have any trouble finding them, you can also just go to tennisfiles.com/podcast and go and click on the search button in the player, and then you'll be able to search for that particular person, and then you can listen to the full length episode. So again, that's tennisfiles.com/podcast is the central hub for all the podcasts. And of course, you can listen to these podcast episodes and do a similar search of your own on any podcast app, including iTunes, or I guess now it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. So without any further ado, I will bring you these episodes, and I really hope you enjoy it. This is a long one. This is going to be around 3 hours almost of content, but I did say I think I said it would be a mega episode in the title. So it certainly is. So I hope you enjoy it, and here we go.
So let's just say it's 50%. Let's just say it's 40%. So because we know there's people with tons of beautiful strokes that just cannot win, so if beautiful strokes was the measure then something's going on at my club, because the guys with the beautiful strokes don't necessarily win the tournament. So I think it's kind of fool's gold and easy to chase. So, but when you ask the dangerous question, which is, okay, so I ask people, what do you think, Betty, and what do you think, Johnny? What percentage of tennis is mental? Usually they'll tell me, I'm getting responses anywhere from 20 to 80, okay? Mm-hmm. So let's say Johnny says, that's 40% mental. I say, okay, let's say you're right. And then say, now let's look at the last 2 months of your time. And are you, in everything you do, that's our audit, how many hours of practice, how many tournament matches, how many practice matches, are you doing any off-court training? And we just write it all down. And then we look at it and say, how many, you said it's 40% mental, but you have 0% time in your regimen. And he's like, yeah, I guess that's not good, is it? But the problem is they don't know, like Johnny's like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, how do I train mental? So I think a lot of it, for me, some of it's on the court. You can do drills that put pressure on you and stuff like that. But a lot of it is just things I learned off the court, in books and articles and presentations. I remember reading the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, which is a classic, which is probably viewed by every tennis pro ever. And shock, when I was 16, 17 years old, I used to get mad at myself. I wasn't like a total maniac on the court, but I was very impatient with myself. And my inner voice was really bad. I would be an inner critic and I'd miss a shot. And I didn't always say it out loud, but internally, like, oh, you suck. Come on, man, move your butt. And I was really kind of negative. And just reading that book and understanding self one, self two, and what that means, it was just like blew my mind. And I'm like, the next day I'm working on that stuff. So for those of you that don't know that book, one of the things, this is so helpful to me. The book kind of goes, I'll paraphrase this idea, which is basically, if you look at a tennis match, a lot of times a single player will be angry, right? He's yelling at himself. Sometimes the inner voice becomes the outer voice and you hear it. Come on, Jorge, move your feet. That backhand's horrible. You suck. Whatever they're saying to themselves. And it's weird because it's just one person and they're having a conversation. So it usually takes two people, right? So this book kind of puts out the theory that what's happening there is Jorge, and he's talking to Jorge, right? But is it like Jorge's right finger talking to his left foot? So here's how he breaks it down. He says, it's my mind. It's Jorge's mind yelling and scolding Jorge's body for mistakes it made. So I miss a backhand. I go, come on, man. That backhand is a joke. Okay, well, what happened there? It wasn't my left hand telling my right hand that it's a joke. It's my mind, okay, telling the body how bad it is. Okay, so my inner coach, my inner critic, is kind of an assassin. And some people talk to themselves so negatively that the things that I used to say to myself, if someone else was saying them on the sidelines, I'd probably jump the fence and get a fist fight, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm saying that to myself. So when that was explained to me that, hey, that's self one yelling at self two, it's your mind yelling at your body. And here's the trick. Your body can learn a lot, right? So if you can just quiet your mind, tell self one to just shut the heck up for a second and let the body figure it out, that if the body can perform without totally being yelled at every 2 seconds, it does better. So intellectually, that made sense to me, right? So I went out the next day. I remember I played on a clay court. And I thought, okay, every time I make a mistake, I'm not going to get mad. I'm just going to, it's data. Okay, I hit it in the net. So my racket must have been too close or whatever. Or that one, I sliced it and it floated. Okay, so I must have come under it too much. And just data. It's not emotional data. It's just a data point. And the other kind of epiphany I had also in that book is the way it's all perspective, right? So if I'm playing you, Mirvan, and I hit a backhand down the line and it goes out by a foot, well, that's not good, bad. And for me, I might assign that as something bad. Like, I hit that backhand wide. That's bad. Okay. And then if I labeled it bad, I might start to get angry about it, right? But the exact same shot, you would label it what? Good. Great. I got a free point here. Okay. So how can it be both? It isn't, right? It's just the way we interpret it.
Exactly.
The third person on that court would be a chair umpire. If there was a chair umpire, he would look at that ball, and how would he look at it?
Neutrally.
I don't care. It was wide by a foot. Okay. He just looks at it as data. So I had to learn that when I made my errors, that I had to react like the umpire. Just look at it like, I was wide, so it was probably a little bit late on my point of contact. I got to get it more in front, and I won't go quite that far off on the ankle, and just use it like that. Now, if I told you that the next day I did it perfectly, that'd be lying, but at least I had a plan. Okay, so that's how you get good mentally. So it depends on what the mental issue is. If you get nervous, you can play pressure sets where the points affect the scoring. So I would play you, and every game starts at 30-30, so that we're right in the thick of it. If I have if my mind wanders, I can start little rituals where I say bounce, hit, bounce, hit, bounce, hit. So I keep my mind focused because your mind can only think of one thing at a time. If I tend to be angry, and cussing, that's usually past thinking because I made a mistake and now I'm complaining about it. If I tend to be nervous, like, oh my gosh, if I get this game, I'll be up 2-0. That's usually future thinking. Future thinkers, when your mind's out in the future, Oh, if I win this, I get, oh, there's all my friends. I can't wait to shake hands and get out there. We're all going to be happy that I won. That's not all in the future. I
Mm-hmm.
can be nervous. Future thinking causes nervous a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Past thinking usually reveals anger. If you see somebody like, they're not pissed about the next shot, like, oh my God, this next forehand is horrible. Usually if they're mad, they're talking about the last forehand, something that just went bad. So then there's tricks that you can do okay, so I can't, my mind wanders, so I'm going to just give myself, I'm going to hit with you. And every time I hit, when the ball bounces on the ground, I say bounce. And when I hit it, I say hit, bounce, hit. I occupy my mind. And now I have something to do, and it helps me. So there's lots of ways that you can do it that I've learned over the years. But that's a huge thing. The inner game of tennis, self one, self two, and just being the umpire are some major things that help me in this whole area of mental toughness and just be more calm and have a better perspective.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Definitely, we're going to have a link to the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, on the show notes page. It'll be in the app that you're using to listen or underneath the video. And yeah, Jorge, so you kind of mentioned how when you first tried to implement what you had learned, in the first few pages, you obviously couldn't do it perfectly. So what is the key to being able to consistently implement? Because, obviously there's a lot of players who maybe they find a great idea, a great concept, and then they try it out and then maybe it doesn't work because a lot of society is into instant gratification and, they want results immediately. And then they stop practicing that. So how do we stick with it?
Yeah, to me, what made me stick with it was all I needed to stick with it was to see just a morsel of improvement. Like or just to conceptually go like, yeah, that would help me because I know I'm a maniac of the way I talk to myself. And if I could do that. So I was excited to do it. Now I would try, okay, and maybe I wouldn't do it so well, but I would still say, you know what, even though I stunk at it, I did better today than my normal state of thought. Now, obviously, if I'm playing a match and I'm ahead, I'm not usually angry when I'm ahead. I'm talking these tough matches where I'm losing and that I think I should be winning. If you just isolate those matches, those are the more important ones to kind of do it. So I think the key is understanding. You might even journal this kind of stuff, but just say, my goal in the next month is to have better inner voice, the way I talk to myself, and I'm going to do these 3 or 4 things. And I'm just going to practice them just like my forehand. I wouldn't expect my forehand, a new forehand, for example, to just kill like the first 3 seconds after I try something new. If my coach has changed my grip, my point of contact, and my swing path, I might say, okay, logic tells me I'm in learning mode right now. And then I'm going to do training mode. And then from there, I'll go into competition mode. Same thing with these mental skills. I'm learning how to look at a shot unemotional. And I'm going to probably stink at it because I'm not comfortable with the stuff that I've done. So if you look at it kind of like the same patience level that you would at a shot, I think that's what helps. As a coach, I can get some kids to kind of buy in when I explain it that way. And I tell them up front, I go, look, so now you know what I want you to try. You think you're going to do it perfect? I just asked them, you think you're going to do it perfect? They, probably not. I said, okay. So you'll do it. And I'll say, that was a good one. That was a 9 right there. That was like almost perfect. That was a stinky one, Mayor Brown. That was a 3, make a fart noise or something. And just kind of like let them know, like, okay, I'm out here battling, I'm trying stuff. But it's really fascinating. I mean, one of the things I was going to tell you, so we talked about this a little bit before. So I have this course for mental toughness. That's my kind of opt-in course that I give free to the world. But before I sent it, I sent out to probably 20,000 followers. I said, what are your struggles when it comes to mental toughness? Well, there's no right answer. I just want to hear from you all personally. And I got a ton of responses. And the 4, I'm going to just share these with you because they're kind of cool. I decided to take them all and put them into 4 kind of big categories. Category 1 was fear of losing. A lot of people felt like, man, this is my issue. I get nervous and I'm always afraid of losing. So that was 1. The second category, which was a surprise to me, was closing out matches. I get ahead and I can't finish anybody. What's wrong with me? I can't finish off sets. I can't finish off matches. If I'm ahead, I always find a way to give up the lead. So that was interesting. The third one was people recognizing that their inner voice was horrible. Like that's, oof, I'm very impatient. I'm mad at myself. Sometimes I make a fool of myself. my inner voice has become my outer voice, and now everybody thinks, oh, yeah, that guy's crazy. And then the fourth one was just dealing with overall choking and nerves. Like, I mean, I'm so nervous, like I can't swing normal. Like my swing is actually being changed physically. So those were the four big categories. And as I looked at them, outside of that one about closing sets, I could resonate with, all that stuff. So I'm kind of looking at my thing there. I think when it comes to closing out matches, let's talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah.
I think what tennis players don't recognize or don't appreciate maybe is just how diabolical the scoring system is in our sport. When you play tennis, it's one of the few sports where I'm playing you, Mirban, and my points are not cumulative. I don't just keep at like baseball, basketball, soccer. Most sports is cumulative. You got one, it's one. You got a second point, it's a second point. But in tennis, I play you. Let's just take the very first game. I play you. I win some points. You win some points. At the end of that game, you win it. All right. So what happens to those 3 points I won? They're flush. They go off my scoreboard. Okay. So that's a thing that a lot of people don't quite get. So what happens is it builds pressure. It's inherently pressure filled because it's frustrating. I'm winning a lot of points. I'm down 4-0. What's going on? How could this Mirban guy beat me? I'm freaking at 0-4. I'm playing pretty good. This is, and people don't like that feeling, right? So it also is tough because you and I could be playing, maybe we have a really tight set and maybe it's a bit contentious and it goes to 5-5, then it goes to 6-6, and then it's in the breaker. And you and I might have been playing for more than an hour. A lot of energy, a lot of emotional. It's been over an hour. We're hot, we're sweaty. And both of us know that in the next 60 seconds, one of us is going to grab a set and one of us is going to lose the whole freaking hour's worth of effort. It's going back to zero.
Sucks.
So imagine a basketball team playing and you said, okay, guys, the score, here's the deal. Let's stop for a second. It's the third quarter and it's late in the third quarter and the score is 92-88. And here's what we're going to do. We're not going to play for the clock. We're not even going to play fourth quarter. We're going to play up to 100. Okay. And whoever gets to 100 first wins. The other guy, nothing. Okay. So that's a little bit more like what tennis has, right? So what happens is when it's 96, 97, both those teams are like, dude, this is like we're inches away from winning or the whole thing goes to pot. All right. So I think tennis scoring is really tough. It's made for comebacks. It's made to be really difficult to put people away. In ping pong, I used to play a lot of ping pong. If I was playing you, Mirban, in ping pong, and let's say I'm up 20-5. Okay, so we play the 21, right? That means you are facing literally 15 consecutive sudden death points, right? So there's no way you're going to win. Even if I choke, you're probably not going to pull off 15 in a row, right? But check out tennis. If you go to the tennis version of that, and I'm up 5-0 in the third set, right? I got 5, you got 0. There is no sudden death. I can play a long game.
So at the end, is always a equation of the points that you managed to win with the mistakes of the other one. So if you are returning at club level, my advice will be always to find a return that is very safe, but it has a lot of length, okay? So in club level, you tend to play a lot of balls in the middle of the court. What I will try to find is to see if you have kind of a return that you can play a bit deeper. And if you play a bit deeper, the other one is going to have to go more far. So that means that then you're going to be able to step in. And then you're going to be kind of like dancing. If you are able to return deep, you have a big chance that to be able to play with your strengths after, whatever are. Like if it's the slice or the forehand or whatever it is. And so that's really important. To be able to return deep, it's very important to see the line of the ball of the serve and the height of the ball and the speed. So you can, many times at club level, the problem that they have is that they try to make the same shot independently of the speed of the ball and the height of the ball that they're going to hit it. And then suddenly they say, why this ball goes to the fence and the other one goes to the net? It's because you are not watching well the ball of the opponent. And that anticipation don't start with the opponent, it starts with your own shot. If you play deep, there is a big chance that the shot from the opponent is going to be short. And then you are going to be more comfortable. It can be long also. It can be deep as well. But there is a lot of chances that is not deep.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the best basic strategies is hitting the deep ball and yielding the short ball. And that reminds me, Emilio, I saw a video, maybe 45 minutes long or so, of a presentation you gave. And I know there was a part of it where you had two juniors playing, or actually most of it. And then I think you were criticizing one of the juniors because they weren't moving forward. You know, when they had like a short ball, the footwork wasn't there. They're just waiting there with the open stance for the ball. Yeah. So I was wondering, you know, that's basically the next shot if you hit a good return. Can you talk about some keys to the footwork and the importance of moving forward on these shots instead of just waiting?
Well, that's one of the things today. The pro players play so fast and so deep that they have very few chances to move to the ball because they play at super high level. So they're going to play very, very few short balls. Okay, so but they're going to do it. So the thing that the people don't see is that because if, I don't know, whoever they like, Shapovalov or Djokovic or Thiem or whatever, they play so many times back and waiting for the ball, it's not because they want to wait, it's because of the length of the ball of the opponent. So at the moment that the opponent leaves a short ball, they're going to move to the ball because they want to beat the ball. So, but when you don't train properly and you always waiting for the ball, when there is a short ball, and then you almost don't arrive to the ball. And that it goes with the very fast surfaces or with this training at super high speeds, you know. So, and that's one of the reasons why the players have difficulties in moving towards the ball. And when they start to improve that, and then they become way much better players. And it's something like maybe today more you cannot move towards the ball more than 15% or 20% of the time, because most of the balls you're going to have to wait for the ball or go away from the ball. But since there is big results only waiting for the ball and playing waiting for the ball, no one has the need to go to the ball. So that's why many people today are not capable of arriving to volley, because they don't see that opportunity, that 15% of opportunities, they don't see it and they don't walk to the ball, and then the net is much far away, so they cannot volley. Instead, who are the best players in the world are the ones who walk better to the ball. They're the ones that inside the court, they open better the court. They are more initiative and they open better the court. And are those players which are capable of playing very well, waiting for the ball and stepping on the back foot and or even on the front waiting. But when the ball is short, they open the court and they step in and they arrive to the net. And if you take Nadal now, if you take Federer, if you take the best players, are the ones that they step better and they push more the opponent because they want to have the control of the center of the court. And that's, I think, one of the lacks that we have in the tennis today. In our time, we could walk to the ball more because we were not playing so deep as today. But you have to adapt to the times and try to find the best possible player that you are. You know, you try to step into the ball.
For sure, Emilio. And I mean, how do you like to train that? I mean, is it more like feeding short balls and just instructing the player, or like what's your approach to getting mentally and also strategically the player to get to do this more?
Well, the thing is that the player has to be convinced that every opportunity that he has to take the ball more inside the court, they have to try to do it and just stepping more towards the ball. And it has to be like a commitment. You still can play not doing so, and you can still win not doing so. But you're going to become much better player, because what we want is that when I wanted as a player was to become the best player I was able to become. And what I want today as a coach is that my students have the maximum tools that they can have to be able to compete better. So, but if they never enter the court, they will never volley. And if they never volley, they never develop that part of the game. So that's something that is a requirement. It takes work, it takes commitment, effort from the player, because it's easier waiting and hitting the ball and destroying the ball. But I think that's a kind of player that is not building the game. I like the players that they build the game. And the transition that Nadal has done in the last 2-3 years is because before he was waiting for the forehand so far and playing from so far. When they start to open the court from him, he realizes that he had no chance. So he had to make this incredible transition of, instead of waiting for the ball from the back foot, now he's stepping on the front foot, and he's much more aggressive, and he arrives more to volley, and he's playing much better inside the court. Shapovalov is doing the same. Before, he was waiting, turning every shot with the open stand and he was not doing nothing. Now that he's stepping on the ball, yesterday he didn't win because the other one was very fortunate, but he played better in some parts of the match. He played much better than Djokovic. So this year, Shapovalov if he continues this way, has a big chance to do much more damage than before because he's now stepping much better inside the court.
Great stuff again, Emilio. And speaking about the footwork aspect, so in order to become a more aggressive player, would you say that we actually have to maybe do less open stances and then look to step in more? Is that kind of what we should be thinking about with the footwork change?
For me, totally. People say, no, if you step to the ball, is all tennis, or is how they play before. But no, for me, is a way that you generate the time to be able to step on the ball and beat the ball. So it's much more aggressive, and the concept of the open stand is to play with is to make the shot with the outside foot. The concept of the step into the ball, using also the back foot to be able to transfer the weight. So you're using the back foot the same as in the open stand. The only thing is that you're using all your body. So it's something that the people, okay, sometimes I'm going to have to go open stand because I want to have more reach to the ball to be able to try to do something similar if I was stepping on the ball. But it's not going to be possible because with a circular rotation, you are never going to generate the same amount of power as with the lineal transfer of weight. So the power that you have to generate here in the open stand, far away from the body, and the rotation that you have to have compare and the speed of the racket that you have to put is so much more effort, and you go away from the area than when you step on the ball and you just let the inertia of the racket do the shot and open the court. So it's if you really see the matches and count the point well, why we are able to play the 1+1 or the 1+1+1, and most of the points are finished in 3 or 4 shots, because thanks to the serve, you are able to step on the ball and open the court, and that's a key way of going and to opening the court. If you prefer to serve and then make the open stand and also win the point because you have the time, is limiting you as a player. It's limiting you because you're gonna still are able to make a winner, but you are not gonna be able to follow if the other one sees the ball to close in the net. You are not gonna be able to do it 3 or 4 times in a row. You just have to, what I call, destroy the game. Just go for the winner, and that way of playing, it can be good for a while, but most of the people who play like that, at some moment when they start to lose some matches, they don't know, they don't have nothing else, they only have that, and when that doesn't work, and then you become more player without the confidence, and then it's very difficult to play that way. If you learn to play, you can play at that speed, you can play at much slower speed, and still have the initiative. So still be a better player, and and that gives you many more tools.
Yeah, a lot more tools. And this is something that I wish I did earlier in my game. I was always the kind of person who's counterpunching, just grinding from the back of the court. And so it's been, kind of tougher for me to mentally shift to be more aggressive. But this is great advice, obviously, but also for those of us who are aging too. We can't just from the backcourt all the time, transition, go up.
You are a counterpuncher. That means that you have a good eye and you see well the line of the ball. So, but if you will see better, where are you playing your balls? to win time and do what you're doing far from the line, do it more closer to the line. And then in some moments, the other one is going to be short. So those moments you're going to convert to aggressive and dictating moments for your game instead of always having to counterpunch, which is an incredible tool because you had Andy Murray and Hewitt, which are unbelievable counterpunches because they go so well behind the ball. But if you are able to combine that, like with Andy, the years that he played the best, he was with Lendl, he was counterpunching, but he was stepping to the ball and taking the ball high and arriving to the net. Mm-hmm. Some other years he only played counterpunching, and he making much more effort, but he was not as aggressive and not as better outcome. So if you follow better what is your game and how much length, you're gonna have more time for the next shot. But you understand that the mentality today is to play the shot, not to play the shot, to play the next shot. You understand? So if I go open stand, I destroy the ball, I just go for the winner, I'm not thinking in the next shot.
Right.
Where is the opponent? I am just thinking in finishing, whatever it is, out or in. What I am asking you is to play that shot, to play it deep enough that the other one has to go away, leave the short ball for you to start playing and to play whatever shot you want to play.
I feel like you're a good chess player, Emilio. Do you play chess?
Well, I did my career and I didn't have big weapons. I serve well, I have good forehand, but I play in the time that we had, my prior generation was McEnroe, Lendl, Gomez, all these top guys. And then my generation was with Wilander, Becker, Edberg, Muster, and all these guys. And the generation after was Agassi, Sampras, Kyrgios. So 3 generations playing at the same time was like 15 players without counting Macci, Cash, and all these other players at my level. So it was all the games completely different. So with very little game, I had to challenge those guys and play at the same level as them. So I needed to do those different situations to be able to play with them because I didn't have like a big serve like Boris or like big forehand like Lendl that every time they touch the ball, they make these super big points, So I really had to work the short ball with a deep ball and then the ball, play the game. And that's the way I like the tennis because that's the way I grow it. Is like I was playing with 15 guys in the top 15 that they all play different. So you had to also to adapt your system and your way to 15 different players. Today, many players play very similar. And the only ones that they are a bit different are Federer and Nadal and Djokovic. The rest, they play very similar game. So I think that the differences and the different games are very good for our sport.
For sure.
And if the people will develop more things, they will have more different games. But the people, they just stick to what it works, and they have big capabilities of improving. So when a player like Shapovalov in some months improves so much, it becomes that he's working properly. And he's gonna yesterday arrived to volley a lot with Djokovic, which before he was not arriving. So now he's building the game. So now he can start to do a lot of more things.
I really did not play much doubles in the actual head-to-head matches. And so I still, at that point, had a long way to go to develop proper double strategy. And then after taking a break from tennis for a few years when I went to law school, then I started playing a lot of USTA League tennis, which is a lot of doubles, as you all know. There's many leagues that are exclusively doubles. And then even the seasons where you have a mix, there is more courts of doubles and singles, and then there's a couple exclusive singles leagues throughout the year, but it probably varies depending on where you live. So in any case, I picked up a few more strategies and, forced obviously with playing so much more doubles to really think about my game. And then when I started Tennis Files in about 2015, that's when I got to interview, as you all know, a lot of amazing expert coaches on the subject of doubles. I recently talked to Louis Kaye for Tennis Summit 2020, and he's coached Jamie Murray, just #1 doubles player, and just so many doubles Grand Slam champion and so forth. And yeah, just a lot of great experts. And that's when I started to develop this deep hunger to learn the top strategies from the best coaches in the world on doubles, of course, and also singles and just all the different aspects. But I know that a lot of you, whether because it's like me where I played a lot of singles, pretty much all singles throughout my life and didn't know much about doubles, or because you haven't had doubles coaching, I know that you want to learn some of the top things that you need to do and not to do on the doubles court. And another thing with private lessons too, in my experience, I found that I really was never taught about doubles strategy. You're taught about mostly single strategy, at least when I was getting coached. And I had great coaches, most of them. But you think about, you get coached on like your technique and strategy about singles sometimes, but not so much doubles. So yeah, it's very normal for a lot of players to not really know much about how to play proper doubles. And even when you watch the pro game, there's some differences there that you have to be aware of, and capabilities in your game versus what they're doing and so forth. So in any case, that's why I decided to put together this episode, and it's a natural follow-up to last week's, like I mentioned. And for each one of these points, there is either a mistake that I've made and learned to correct through experience, or something that I've implemented myself and found that's really worked. So I'm very confident in sharing these 7 do's and don'ts with you to help you improve your doubles game. All right, so now we have reached the actual list here with that background. So I'll start it off. Number 1 is do communicate with your partner frequently throughout the match. So a lot of times when I watch doubles matches, I see a severe lack of communication between the doubles partners. And this is usually indicative of a not very successful day on the court. So, I mean, you have to ask yourself, how are you supposed to be able to plan out winning plays and be on the same page during points if you aren't communicating with your partner? And a typical team that I see, they might talk a bit in the beginning, plan out a couple plays, but then once they start losing, they just end up going through the motions, almost like they've given up. And all they're doing is just switching sides and moving up or down, depending on if they're returning or they're at the net. And then they go home and wonder why they lost so badly and how awkward it was on the court with their partner. But successful doubles teams always communicate on the changeovers, and very frequently, with successful teams, often between every single point. And I mean, just think about it. As the server's partner at the net, do I stand a better chance at anticipating my opponent's shot and where to move if I know where my partner is serving the ball, which requires communication? Or will I be better off if it's just a complete surprise as to where my partner is serving? So obviously you definitely want to communicate with your partner very frequently throughout the match. And speaking of communicating, this leads directly into point number 2, very good segue if I do say so myself. Number 2 is do use signals on the serve and also on returns as well, which is a little more advanced, but it's fun as well and can be very useful. So using signals where the net player puts one hand behind his or her back and tells the player where to serve and where the net player will be can make the difference between holding serve and getting broken. And just a quick review of hand signals, because it's very possible that some of you listening or many of you have not used signals before. So the first sign that you give is where to serve the ball. And so you're going to point your index finger or pinky finger to the left or right, depending on what hand you use, to indicate either a wide serve or down the T serve. And you also use your middle finger to indicate a body serve. Warning, just be sure to point that middle finger down to the ground and don't flip it up, or your partner will take it the wrong way. And so that's the first sign. And then the second sign is where you yourself as a net player will go or will be. So those signs are a clenched fist is indicating that you're going to stay where you are. If you spread your hand out, kind of like where you indicate the number 5, then that means you're going to poach. And if you have your index and middle finger pointed down to the ground, which resembles a V, or if you flash your hand repeatedly from a fist to spread out fingers, then that's a fake poach. So obviously you could use different like types of signals for these, but these are the ones that are universally used, at least in the US, and I think probably everywhere. So if you are talking to your partner before every single point, you could get away with not using signals. However, I still like to confirm what my partner and I discussed, especially when the point is super important and the match is close. So maybe it's 4-all, it's add out, and you and your partner are talking about a play. It's better to make sure via the signals rather than to risk making a mistake, which I have definitely done before. You know, there's been times where I've called the poach and then maybe I haven't poached, or my partner has called the poach and I'm serving and then I did not move. And then we just get, we get broken because we're both on the same side of the court. That's not very good. So definitely a double check. You know, you talk and then you confirm with signals is definitely quite useful. And then with the return signals, actually, my really good friend, probably my best friend, introduced this to me, which is a little more advanced, like I mentioned, but you should definitely try it out. And what happens here is, let's say if you are returning, then your partner who's at the net is going to give you a signal whether they're going to stay or whether they're going to actually poach off of your return. So let's have the example again where I'm returning, my partner gives me the spread out hand, which indicates that he's going to poach. So then once the opponent serves and then I return, then my net partner waits a bit and then actually crosses right before the opponent hits the ball, and I also cross as well. So a lot of times the server is just in the mindset of, all right, I'm going to hit the shot after my serve back cross court, obviously, away from the net player, but then meanwhile the net player actually poaches. And so this actually can get a lot of servers, a lot of teams, because they're not expecting this. And this play is really not used much at all, especially in USA leagues below, I'd say 5-0 level. But 5-0, 5-5, etc., like they're actually using it a good amount. So in sum, using signals are part of communicating with your partner, which is critical, and keeping you both on the same page with the same plan of attack. So number 3, another do use the poach, the I formation, and the Australian formations. Back on Tennis Summit 2020, my friend Ian Westerman from Essential Tennis did a great session on disruptive plays. And the purpose of disruptive plays, as he has said before, is to create chaos and to create uncertainty and doubt in your opponent's minds and disrupt their rhythm. By the way, I actually had Ian on the show, and I'll include a link to his episode. But by using the poach, the I formation, and Australian formations, you're going to be able to pick up much more easily short points by finishing off these points at the net off of returns. And you're also going to produce much more unforced errors. And these plays, just a quick summarization in case you don't know. So poach is to move across the court, you switch sides. The I formation is if you start in the middle of the court, both of you actually. So you're serving by the tee, let's say, and then your partner is in the middle, and then the net player tells the server, or you communicate together which side each of you are going to go. Well, yeah, which side that the net player will go to and which side the server will go to. So with the Australian formation, you have both players on the same side or the same half of the court, and then you'll have one player move to the other side after the serve. And that's usually going to be the server. So let's say that if you are serving to the ad side, then your net player, instead of being on the ad side, is actually on the same half as you, which you're both on the left side. And then after the serve, the server is the one who usually is going to move to that to the right, into the right half of the court. But sometimes you can actually reverse this and then have the net player go back to what would be the original position on that ad side, which is more of a kind of a tricky play that could work really well too. And so one story that I have about how using the poach-eye formation, Australian formations, can really impact your success on the court is that I had a USCA Combo League match several months ago, because obviously, there's not as much going on now. But what happened was we were not doing so hot in the beginning as far as holding serve, but then we implemented a combination of these three plays here, and then we started to pick up steam. And then fast forward to the third set tiebreak, where it is actually 8-7 us, and my partner is serving, and then I decide to call I formations on both of these points, whereby I would be actually moving to the side that the opponent would normally return cross court. And by doing this, and by also realizing kind of the situation, and that the player would try to kind of hit the more standard return because it was a kind of a tight time, obviously being 8-7 in the third set tiebreak, I was actually able to pick off both of those returns to seal the match. So if in that case I would have had a regular formation, then obviously it would have been more of a long drawn out point potentially. And by using kind of your brain, not kind of, and using these plays, you have the potential to create a lot of confusion and unforced errors, and pick off a lot of shots, and kind of reduce your efforts and making points more efficient. So I really love using the poach-eye formation and Australian formations. Point number 4 in our first don't of the episode is don't hit cross court when you're in a down the line ground stroke rally, with the exception of a lob. So this is obviously a very specific don't strategy or tactic, but it's one that has bitten me in the bum, to say, in an English style, I suppose, quite a few times, and resulted in unhappy partners as well. So let's say that you've gotten into a down the line rally against the opposing team's baseline player. Usually this happens when one net player is lobbed, because obviously you might be in like a cross court rally, and then somebody switches it up, lobs your partner, so then you and your partner switch sides, and then boom, you're in a down the line ground stroke rally. So the best play here is to keep working the ball deep down the line to then hopefully produce a weaker shot by your opponent baseliner. And you're doing this while your net partner ideally is moving toward your side to cause pressure on the baseline player, the opposing one obviously, and to try to pick off one of the shots or to cause an error.
That is difficult. The best way to prepare for tournaments is match play and play in tournament. So there is really a reason why the pros play so much and the top juniors play so much, because if you don't play enough matches, your game never develops. You cannot be, just practicing will only get you to a certain point. Really, the best practice that you can have is playing matches. And you play matches and kind of to understand where you are. What am I missing? What's happening? When am I getting nervous? Why am I choking in these situations? And if you never really experience that, it's very difficult to play a tournament. So the short answer is, if you want to do well in tournaments, you got to play a lot of tournaments. And the best way to prepare for the tournaments is playing a lot of matches and then just kind of practicing the things that you see happening during those matches. Normally there are patterns. Okay, I feel that when the opponent attacks me to this point, I don't know what to do, or I hate playing pushers because every time I play a pusher, I cannot put the ball away. Or I hate when somebody's coming to the net and attacking me the whole time. So basically, those matches are going to give you the answer to the things that you need to work on. So if somebody's coming to the net and beating you every time, well, you probably don't have, you're not be able to place the passing shot low enough or cross-score enough, or you're not able to lob well enough. So it just gives you cues of where you are.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. And yeah, it's obviously very tough if you're not getting to practice much. I mean, of course, you can think about, things like what we're talking about today, the strategy part. You can, make a game plan before you go out there and, play to your strengths. And if you know the opponent, try to play to their weaknesses. But yeah, nothing takes the place of practice, but you can at least kind of think a little before you play and make a plan. We have a lot of great questions here. I'm going to go back to a couple of mine selfishly. So, Edgar, you talk about the importance of knowing the geometry on the tennis court. And so I would just want to ask you if you could explain a little further, the importance of knowing the geometry of a court and the intricacies involved in that.
Yeah, that's a little bit hard to do just without visuals, but okay, let me see if we can do it. Basically, when you're talking about the geometry of the court, it means understanding the dimensions of the court. Where is the playing field? And where does that put me in relation to the playing field with the net, the sidelines, the baseline? How far can I hit? What happens if I hit cross-court? What happens if I hit down the line? So you kind of follow the angles of the shots. And if you study the different possibilities when you're on the court in terms of what the angles of the shot can mean, or where would they take you if the ball is coming from the right hand of the court and they hit an angle, where would I have to run to get it? And what options does the opponent have if they go down the line? How far can they get me off the court? So if you kind of study the court a little bit and understand the geometry, understand how the basics of the court, you're going to come to a few conclusions. And basically, what the geometry of the court dictates is where should I stand to be able to take advantage to be able to cover best the court. That's one thing that the geometry tells you. And basically, what it tells you is that for every shot that you hit, you should place yourself in the middle of the best possible shots of your opponent. Okay, so that means if I hit a ball into the corner of the opposite court, let's say if it's a right-handed player I'm playing against, and I hit it to his forehand on the corner over there. So the player has two options. He can either hit a down the line shot right on the line, so parallel. He can hit the ball parallel and hit right on the singles line. That is as far as I would have to move to get that ball. Mm-hmm. Or they can hit cross court, but if they hit cross court, they can actually dissect the sideline and make me run a lot farther. So I'm going to have to stand a little bit, not in the middle of the court, because if I stand in the middle of the court, I'm close to this, to my sideline on my backhand side. That means the down the line shot, I'm going to be close to that one. But if they hit an angle, I'm going to be pretty far from that shot. So I really should be standing a little bit to the right of the center line. So the geometry of the court basically tells me that the position for the next shot of the opponent, my position should vary depending on my shot. Depending on where I hit the shot, I need to be moving to that position before the opponent hits it in order to be able to hit either shot that he hits. It's like I said, it's a little complicated without the graphics, but I hope people are getting the idea. And it also tells you, okay, how far should I play? Should I play close to the baseline, or should I back up, or should I play inside the court? Well, there's advantage and disadvantage to all of those options. So basically what you want to try to do is gain time from the opponent. That means you're taking time away from the opponent by hitting the ball as close as possible to where it bounces. The closer that I get to the net, the more angles I can hit, the wider my angles are going to be. The further back I play, the harder it is for me to hit an angle and to hit the person off the court. So I want to try to play close to the net to be able to hit angles and make the opponent run wider every time. Of course, in order to hit closer to the bounce, I got to move faster, and I have to keep my ball deep, because if I'm keeping my ball short, the opponent is going to attack me, and I'm going to have to back up to gain time, because if I don't back up, then I'm not going to get the ball. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that the geometry of the court really teaches you. And basically from the way the court is set up with the net and all that, we know that when we're in a defensive position, we have to gain time so that the next shot we have a better chance. So how do I do that? Well, hit the ball high, use different heights. Mm-hmm. Okay. So those are basically some of the things that just understanding the court will teach us tactically. You know, hit the ball cross court. Why cross court? Because if I hit the ball cross court, I'm in a better position from if I hit the ball cross court and the opponent hits it cross court back to me, I'm already kind of close there. And the farthest I can run is if he hits it down the line. So if he hits it down the line, I'm going to have to run to the line. But here we go again. If I hit it down the line, then the opponent is going to hit cross court. And if the opponent hits cross court, I'm going to have to run much wider because of the angle of his shot. So if we just visualize the court and I hit cross court, just visualize yourself hitting down the line. So you hit down the line and the opponent hits cross court in an angle. So you're going to run and you're going to be in the doubles alley. You're going to hit down the line again. And then the opponent is going to hit cross court again. And then you're going to have to run from the doubles alley to the other doubles alley. Now, let's picture yourself hitting cross court. So if you hit cross court, the best the opponent can do is hit down the line straight to the singles line. So all you have to do is to run to the singles line. And you hit cross court again, and the opponent is going to hit down the line again. So all you have to do is go to the singles line again. So what do you prefer, to run to the doubles alley every time or to run only to the singles line?
Yeah, beautiful point. Just to the singles line, unless, like you said, Edgar, you want to exercise a lot. Then
you want to exercise a lot. Keep hitting the ball down the line. No problem.
Yeah, especially with the fitness level, we're not as fit as team, we can't do that all the time. Great stuff there. So you have a section in your new course that is coming up very soon, which I'm excited about, Edgar. The singles tactic masterclass. You have a section on how we beat ourselves, and I was wondering if you could maybe give us one or two of those ways that we actually do end up beating ourselves, so that we can know that and then stop doing it.
All right. Well, basically, there's a few things that you can do right away to improve your chances of winning. And the first thing that you need to do is just kind of keep track of what is happening in the match. So you have to ask yourself, am I really getting beat, or am I really beating myself? Mm-hmm. A lot of times what happens is we start the match and we're a little bit nervous and we're trying to hit these great shots because we know the opponent is pretty good. And since I'm a little bit nervous, I start making mistakes, and then I get a little bit more nervous. And obviously what's going to happen? Well, I'm going to make more mistakes. And then it just keeps going like that. And then suddenly I realize, okay, I already lost the first set and I'm still kind of making mistakes, and I'm nervous. I don't know what to do. And I never get out of that situation, and I end up losing the match. And the other guy actually didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. I just did everything. So the first thing that you need to do is in the changeover, okay, you know what? I'm making all the mistakes. So let's first get the ball in. So let's get the first serve in. Don't try to kill it. Just get it in. Get the return. Aim it at the middle of the court. Just get that ball in there. hit every ball cross court. Why cross court? Because I'm hitting over the lower part of the net. I have more area to hit into, and it gets me in a better position. So I'm nervous. Hit cross court. Don't hit down the line. Give yourself good targets. Once I do all that, maybe I'm trying to win and I don't have to do anything else. But let's say, okay, I did all that and I'm still losing. Okay, then I need to start thinking, okay, well, maybe let's see if I can attack a little bit more, change it here, change it there. But at least I set a base. You have to set a base. You got to make sure that, okay, I'm setting a base. I'm giving myself a chance. The opponent is still beating me. So, okay, let's push it from there. But if you don't set a base, you're giving the match away. The other, there's several other things that are fairly easy for everyone to do. And one of them is what I said before, get the point started. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're returning a lob, but return it, get it in the court, make the opponent hit a next shot. Same thing on your serve. A lot of us, even if there might not be a huge difference between the first and the second serve, or maybe if it is, and we're missing the first serve every single time, it might be better just to take a little bit off and just start getting it in. Get your 50% first serves in. Try to shoot for that. Take some pace off, hit the ball with a little bit more spin. One of the big problems that I see at the amateur level is trying to, this idea of a great shot in tennis is a bullet 1 inch over the net. The reality is that is a terrible shot, because even if it's hard, if it's so low, it is going to be short. The key in tennis is to keep the ball deep. Why? Because you're taking away the chance of the opponent to attack you. So even if it's softer and deeper, it's going to be more effective than really hard and short. Plus, the other thing is, if you're aiming so close to net, you're probably going to be making a lot of mistakes in the net. So one of the first things that I tell all my students is you have to make sure that you're not missing balls in the net. That should be your mantra anytime that you practice. If you're hitting balls in the net, you're not aiming at the right height. You need to be aiming at least 2 nets high, at least. So basically, if you're practicing without thinking about it, you should never be hitting balls in the net. That should be your normal shot. Your normal shot is double net. Most players, the problem is that they see the net and they say, oh, all I have to do is clear that. And so they aim way too close to the net and they make tons of mistakes into the net. So if you don't take anything away from this podcast, if you only take away one thing, is aim high. Don't make mistakes in the net. That in itself is really going to help your game. Other things, do what you do best, right? I mean, there's no rule in tennis that I have to hit a forehand in this situation or a backhand in this situation, or that I have to stay back or I have to go net. You can do whatever you want. So play the odds. If you have a much better forehand than a backhand, try to never hit a backhand.
That's what I do.
Right?
Yeah.
If your ground strokes are terrible, but you're really good at the net, don't stay back a single moment. It doesn't matter. If what you do best is hitting slices, just hit slices the whole time.
You have a few different options here. One, you just play the percentages, right? You cover as much court as you can with that one step. Now, you can't cover everything. That's just the bottom line. So if you give the passing guy, and he's skilled, time on that side, you're in trouble. You know, that's the bottom line. You know, you're just gonna either have to get lucky or hope they make a mistake, something along those lines. So that's one theory. Just play the angles, the geometry of that passing shot, and just you know that's why, like, if I approach to the ad side, right, I'm approaching, I'm coming, I'm my court position, I'm off on that same side. You kind of, that old saying, you follow the ball, and it is true. And realistically, you can cut off the angle cross court better that way, right? And you want to take away that straight ball down the line, right? So that's how you cover the most court. The other way you play it is, you know, your people's tendencies. I remember, you know, I was playing a guy, won't say his name, but everybody said he hit his forehand passing shot cross court. So, boom, yeah, that's cheating. You know what I mean? I won so many points just sitting on it. You know what I mean? I wasn't even covering it, but I was just kind of, you know, just waiting for it, if that makes sense. So that's the other way, is just know your opponent's tendencies. I played another guy who, every time he hit a return, he would pull the return. So if it was, he's a righty, if it was on the do side, he'd hit his forehand cross court and he'd pull his backhand inside in. And, you know, vice versa on the ad side, he would pull his forehand return inside in, and then his backhand return would go cross court. So that's cheating. You know what I mean? If you know something like that against your opponent, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. And the last way to kind of cover the net is a little bit what, Federer does it really well sometimes, but the best person at it was Rafter. Rafter would actually bait you into your favorite passing shots, or he would leave something open intentionally. So he'd make it look like there was a lot of room there, and then he would just try to get you to hit the passing shot there, and he'd be anticipating that big explosive crossover step and cut it off, you know. So those are kind of the three theories, concepts that I've seen work consistently when coming to the net.
Love that. I really appreciate that, Taylor. It's really gold there. And also just a technical tip. I think, you know, in general, obviously, especially for amateur players, you know, there's certain technical inefficiencies on the volleys and, you know, every stroke. But, I mean, are there any particular technical pieces of advice that maybe you find yourself telling your students fairly often that you think would be helpful on the volley side?
Yeah, there's definitely a handful. I mean, one is the obvious one, and it's a must. I've never seen a good volleyer use a lot of wrist on their volleys. So that's number one. You got to grip the handle strong, keep your wrist strong. And the reason for that is why do we want wrist in certain situations? On a serve, man, we want as much as we can get on you know, big aggressive ground strokes, forehand, backhand. Yeah, we want a ton of wrist because that generates easy, cheap racket head speed. You know, and in those situations, we're generating racket head speed to create topspin. Well, we don't have that luxury at the net, and we're at the net. We're close to the baseline on the other side. So, you know, racket head speed isn't really an asset at the net. So you want to take that away. So lock up the wrist. That's number one. And number two, I would say that I see a lot is people try to help the spin on the volley. The spin is already taken care of by the fact that your racket face is open or the bottom edge is coming first. So you pretty much after that just hit through the ball. You know what I mean? And you don't try to help put the spin on there. It's already taken care of. Number three kind of goes in the same breath as that is you want a very flat stroke with a volley. You know, and to do that, you got to see where the ball is going, and you got to set the racket, the strings on the same level, the same height as the ball. If you set the strings lower than the ball, well, you're going to have to come up to it, and that should generate topspin. That's no good. And if you set the strings high above the ball, you're going to have to come down on it, and that's going to create too much of a chopping thing and too much spin or too much pop on that ball. So whatever height that ball is coming at you, that's where you want to get the strings as soon as possible, and then you're set up in a good position to just come straight through that point of contact. And there is a little bit of a downward motion, but not much.
Great stuff, Taylor. Yeah, I mean, you know, one big mistake I used to make was I used to keep my wrists cocked a bit upwards. I don't know, maybe 45 degrees or something like that for whatever reason. So I was wondering, you know, why was I having so much trouble with low balls? And, you know, it's that advice you said there to keep it at the same level.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, appreciate that, Taylor. So, you know, you mentioned your father, Phil. He's actually known as a serve doctor, and he's coached a lot of great players. And I was wondering, you know, whether it was growing up or whether when it was on tour, what's one piece of advice that really stuck with you that your father has told you about the game?
About the game in general, that's tough.
It could be about anything,
you know, he was
actually.
my coach one piece of advice. I would say this. Here's what I would say. And again, it gets back to kind of my upbringing, is relentless. You know, you have to be relentless. You're gonna be faced with so much failure as a tennis player. It's absolutely staggering, and it's all on you. And if you don't have that attitude, that mindset of just being relentless and you just keep coming, no matter what. Obviously, you don't want to be brain dead. but you're persistent. I mean, when Federer, like these two stats blow my mind about failure. When Federer had like the greatest 4 years that tennis has ever seen, when he first started dominating tennis, he only won 52% of those points over those 4 years. Like if you would ask me without me knowing these stats, I would have said, oh, he's winning, 60% of those points. He's winning 52, barely over half. You know what I mean? And when Djokovic had that one career year where it was the best single year that tennis ever seen, he won 53.5% of the points. The difference between success and failure is so fine in any professional sport. But I would say a lot in tennis is it's all on you, just like other individual sports. And it's me versus you. There's also this direct confrontational thing. It's almost like prize fighting. It's almost like UFC. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm going against you. Who's better today? And it's all on me. And it's tough. It's really tough. And if you don't have that spirit of, you know what, nothing's stopping me, nothing's going to hold me down, I'm going to figure it out, I'm going to work through it, I'm going to do what it takes, it's hard. You're going to get beaten around.
For sure, Taylor. And you say relentlessness, and that's one of the huge keys. But there, I mean, even for probably an athlete like you, and, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but I'm sure there were days where you still felt like, maybe I really want to take a break today.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really tired. So I was wondering, in those days, what types of, I don't know, strategies or things that you thought about or things that you implemented to help you get through those types of situations?
Yeah, and again, don't get me wrong, I don't think you have to go out there every day and just bust it out. I mean, if you are strategically taking a rest, if you've been trying to push through some type of an emotional gap, maybe you need a couple of days off. Maybe you need a week off. You know what I mean? Because I've seen it so many times. People take a step back and then they come back stronger. Now, if you're taking a step back to avoid a situation, then that's not going to work. Because that situation is going to pop up again and again. I can't speak for everybody. Obviously, what motivates you? What motivates me? What motivates Federer? I don't know. You know what I mean? But it's all different for everybody. But what motivated me is I wanted to win slams. I mean, I couldn't sleep. Like if you ask my wife Jenny, she was with me out on the tour. I couldn't sleep some nights because I just was up thinking about my game. What is stopping me from winning Grand Slams, and how am I going to fix it? And when I was on the plane ride, it was literally my ritual. I'd be like, why am I not winning Grand Slams? What am I going to do about it? And that was kind of what motivated me. And I didn't really have too much of an issue to get up and practice because I felt like practice was the key to me winning those Grand Slams. That's what I believed. And I just wanted to make sure that whatever I was doing on the practice court was taking me towards winning those Grand Slams. I didn't want to be wasting my time out there. Now, if I didn't have an answer, if I didn't have a strong feeling of what was going to take me in that direction, you better believe I'd be lost. You better believe that I would be unmotivated and not want to go out there. But I thought about it so much, and I asked so many people. I wanted so many opinions. Not that I agreed with any of them or a lot of them, but I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at my game unemotionally and from every angle possible.
Gotcha, Taylor. Yeah, that's passion right there, and really guided you, and you had a tunnel vision, and that's fantastic. It's a time of goals. Although they say that it's better to focus on systems and goals. So I was wondering if you have any pieces of advice, given that it's New Year's and people will set their goals, and then about 80% of them will stop pursuing them, in 2 weeks. But I was wondering, if you have any advice about maybe being able to actually stick to those goals and persevere.
I tell you what, I'm horrible. I'm actually horrible at goals outside of the tennis court. Like, I set goals for getting fitter and doing this and doing that, and I'm bad. So I can't really speak to goals off the tennis court. On the tennis court, I was really good. And I wish I could translate that to my life a little bit better, but it just doesn't seem to happen. But I'll tell you what I did. So the biggest goal experience that I had in my career was when I had my back surgeries. And then, that was a year-long process. I was in bed, and all of a sudden the doctor said, it healed up really well. I think you should try to play tennis again. Like when I had those surgeries, I thought I was done, and so boom, now all of a sudden I've been out of the game for so long. I've been in bed for a year straight. How am I going to get back to this? And I was working with Trevor Molwad down in Florida, and he really taught me the power of achieving goals. Okay, so whatever you do, make sure it's easy and it's achievable. Nothing is going to be more demoralizing than not achieving your goal. So what I mean by that is, for me, my first goal to get back on the tennis court was just to walk down the street and back without stopping, because in the beginning I couldn't do that. That's a small goal, and if I know I can achieve that if I just spend a few days doing it. So you achieve that, and there's this kind of, even if it's a dumb little goal, there's this thing. These modern games you play, kind of like I don't know whatever these games are, but they give you these little quests, these little objectives within a level, and they can be meaningless and stupid, but just that achieving that little objective encourages you to keep going. It's like a little pat on the back type of thing. So I would say with goals, make them very small and make them very achievable.
Yeah, that is really great advice, Taylor. I think that a lot of people, first off, they'll set these really high goals, like, I want to start working out, an hour a day
exactly.
and you might as well just set the goal of like, I'm going to work out like 10 minutes a day for 3 days. And then, you get that going, then you just build up from there.
Exactly.
And also I know there's a lot of people who, they set a goal to lose 100 pounds. And even though they've lost like 7 or 8 pounds in a couple weeks, they think of like the end, how much they have left rather than appreciating how far they've come. So, but yeah, that's great advice there, Taylor. And, you gave us some amazing advice on the volleys, so I can't help but ask you about the serve. And this is kind of maybe a silly question, but Taylor, what is the secret to hitting a 149 mile per hour serve?
Well, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, obviously, sure. I don't know if the term kinetic chain is correct, but it's more or less correct. You know what I mean? You need to be firing your body parts in the right order. I would say and this is where I will disagree with kind of the common thought is, I don't think the legs are a huge deal for increasing speed. Now for creating spin on the ball, they are a massive deal. But for creating speed, not so much. The shoulder turn, like think about like a baseball pitcher. When they've got a runner on first and their back is to first base, they don't have the luxury of that big shoulder turn. You know what I mean? So they just do a little quick one, and because of that, the quality of the pitches deteriorate, right? When there's no runners on and he doesn't have to worry about somebody stealing the base, you see this huge, massive shoulder turn. Why is that? They're loading up for that power. So I'd say that's a big one. Another power killer that I see is when people they get in their trophy position right before they're about to explode, and the energy on their elbow is already spent. And what I mean by that is the hand is already laid back on the wrong side of the elbow. Like if you think about having your palm down and then shooting that elbow forward, and that starts that throwing motion. It's more, throwing and hitting a serve is more about the elbow coming, forward in the throw or up and forward for a serve, rather than the hand going backwards. You can't have the hand going backwards. It actually kind of stays in the same area as the elbow comes forward. So that one is a big one that I see all the time. People bring the hand backwards, and it just kills the elbow's whippiness. The other thing is, the wrist snap. Everybody snaps their wrist. You can slow-mo everybody. It's like a forehand. Everybody snaps their wrist. The timing of when that wrist snap happens, though, is everything. So if it's happening during contact or after contact, you're losing out on a ton of racket head speed. It's actually, you have to start that wrist snap before contact even happens.
That is the money question. That is a great question. And I just want to share a quick story here. So I have a young 15-year-old player came back from an ITF in the Bahamas, and I was asking about the tournament in front of the other athletes, because I think it's really important to share. They can learn a lot from somebody. They want to go to ITFs, and hey, here's somebody that's been to ITFs, so we can learn from him. Yeah. So the thing he said to me, I said, what was one of the things you took away from this experience? He said, the number one seed warmed up for 45 minutes prior to his match. And I was like, God bless you for saying that. How much time do you need that's always the big question. I mean, I think you don't want to go overboard with it either. You don't want to tire your athlete out. The way we started, I came up with a 8-minute mobility circuit to begin. And the reason why I say 8 minutes is that I wanted to prove to the athletes, listen, you have 8 minutes. There's no doubt you don't have 8 minutes. So we start with an 8-minute mobility circuit. Quite honestly, I love it. I do it almost every day for myself. Then from there, we go into a dynamic warm-up. So, your knee hugs, your ankle grabs, the world's greatest stretch. We'll get the elastic bands out, get some activation going, and then we'll go into some fundamental tennis-specific movements. I mean, we'll start with some basic shuffling, ramp it up, do some skips in there, some very light plyometrics, some pogo jumps, some hops, just to get the body ready for the rigors of the court. And if they want to do some shadowing at the end, that's up to them, and they're ready to go. So long story and answer, I would say about 20-25 minutes.
Cool. Good stuff, Dean. Appreciate that, very specific step-by-step there. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy that. Funny story, when I remember at one championship tournament when I was a junior, I was 16. Not very bright of me, but I would tell myself, I need to save as much energy as possible. Like if I go warm up, I'm going to get tired. And then I remember Tread Huey's mom, who's actually, he's a professional doubles player. So his mom saw me sitting in the car and knocked on the window and said, go warm up. You have to play soon, So yeah, but I've learned gradually thanks to you guys.
But it's funny if you continually perform this warm up, and I think this is a really important takeaway. To me, it's not just a warm up; it's a learning session also. I mean, it's a corrective, it's a learning session. Imagine doing 3-4 sprints in every warm up and working on mobility. That's 20 minutes every day. If you're doing it 5 days a week, that's 100 minutes. In the space of a month and a year, you're able to get a lot more out of that than just warming yourself up. You can get some gains, whether it's, in terms of your speed, your movement, your mobility. It's huge and should not be disregarded so easily.
For sure. I mean, would you say, Dean, that the average USTA player could even take that warm-up of 25 minutes and maybe have it be like a morning workout or evening workout to just improve in general those skills?
Well, at a certain point, that's a great question, Mariband, because at a certain point, it's really hard to tell where the warm-up doesn't sometimes cross over into your fitness routine. Yeah. Because I'm a big believer in warming up and then doing some type of speed and agility drills right away. I mean, what better way to get you ready for the court? You're going to be fresh, so the gains that you can get from this are going to be huge because the body's fresh. It's going to be able to do whatever you want it to do, and your performance will just be top notch.
Yeah, for sure, Dean. And then switching to after your match or your training session, I was curious. Yeah. I mean, I've heard some experts say that you can still stretch hours after playing and still have benefits. I was wondering, is there an optimal time for stretching? Is it always right after you play? I mean, how does that work?
You're just on fire with the questions today, but it's really solid. It makes me think of a lot of things. So first off of my head, I like if it can be done right away, right after. I think that's a good thing for it to occur. A lot of times, optimal situations are not optimal. Like you can't have that period of stretching you want. Player has to leave, has to go to, at times when I was on the tour, they have to do press. So listen, they do it before, they do it after. I think it's really important that it gets done. I've spoken to other physiotherapists about this. Some of them don't really care when it gets done, as long as it gets done before night's end. But one thing I would not leave, since we're talking about recovery, and I just posted something on my Instagram account about recovery yesterday. Listen, if you're not hydrating properly, if you're not taking care of yourself from a nutrition standpoint, if you're not doing the small things, the other stuff doesn't really matter. If you're not sleeping properly, quality of sleep, you hear about, I got the ice bath going. I got these compression boots, which are awesome. You got to take care of the small things first before you start looking at the other stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Dean, just to hammer that point, I'm going to drink some water.
Go for it. Thanks.
Hydrate. Yeah.
Hydrate. No, but that's true. The stretching might not matter, but you better eat within, they say an hour, and now, not now, but for a while now, it's really within that first half hour. When you're an athlete, or if you finish playing a match, try and get something, a smoothie into you, or some type of shake of whatever type, healthy. Obviously not a McDonald's chocolate shake, but something healthy into you as soon as possible. Your cells are at their most receptive, and it's just going to help you for the next day if you got to play again and or practice.
Great stuff, Dean. And so I don't know how much you go into like diets and whatnot, but I mean, there's a lot of different diets out there and people want to experiment. I mean, do you think, let's take maybe intermittent fasting. Do you know any top level players who do something like that and are still successful?
I don't know if a top level player really has to do intermittent fasting. I mean, there's a lot of, first of all, people do it mainly because of for weight loss. And I don't think there's any players out there that are so in need of weight loss. Yes, intermittent fasting has a lot of other benefits. For example, why is nothing coming to my mind right now? So I am drawing a blank, but something for... But there's weight loss, but also inflammation. Very good for inflammation. Yeah. I have a good friend that's doing it for inflammation because his body's just completely wrecked. But I don't think intermittent fasting. I mean, we have to remember all these other diets and these fads out there are really for weight loss. If you're doing a keto diet or something, you're a professional athlete. You have to eat for your sport, and if you're gaining weight because you're a professional athlete, I think you really have to start looking at either the amount of calories you're taking in or the type of food that you're taking in. Got
it, Dean.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to kind of go through the progressions. I might, butcher this, but first we want to, and you'll correct me. First, we want to get the flexibility and mobility, make sure that's good, and make sure that our range of motion is in good shape. And then we want to go on to kind of the basics of the proper movement. And then once we get that down, then what do you suggest the approach should be to increase our explosive power? I mean, is this like mainly movement drills? Is this mainly weights? Is this a combination? Like, how do you attack that?
I would say it's yes to everything. I don't think it's one thing in general. I mean, maybe if you have an athlete that shows no power output, then definitely you'd want to see a good plyometric training program around there. And then I would definitely want to see what their strength level is. I mean, relative to their body size. I mean, it's all about strength. I mean, you're moving your own body. A bigger engine in a car that weighs the same amount will just move faster also. The drills you use are really, really important also. I love using elastic bands, resistant bands with my athletes. I think that really teaches them. It's not so much, it doesn't make you stronger, but it does teach you how to drive through the ground and creating that, that reactive power output through the ground. That's had a lot of benefit for the athletes that I've worked with, and really in some cases can be quite dramatic quickly.
Got it, Dean. Appreciate that. So if we have a training program where we're doing some lateral movement drills and some sprinting, and then we're doing some like squats and deadlifts, do you think that's a program that will facilitate like explosive power? Or do we need more in that? Because I feel like that's kind of the average for a lot of people.
For the movement, I think, you really, we're talking tennis, so specific for tennis players, once you feel comfortable that the tennis player has the basic movement down and they are technically sound, I really believe in very specific movement drills for the athlete. Again, with the bands, either they're pulling you towards something, you're pulling them towards it, which has different effects. So let me clarify that. If I'm standing on the right side of an athlete and I'm holding them and they want to go to their left, they really have to push off with their right leg to get away from me. So that would be their split step and their movement away. And as they're coming back, there's a little bit of an overdrive happening there because I am pulling them back. So it's teaching them to be a little quicker. And then their deceleration phase is really pronounced because of the pull forward. And the other side of the coin is if I stand on the other side and they shuffle towards me and I pull them, now we're working on that overstride type of training again too, that I think is very impossible. With the power output in the gym and the strength training in the gym, squats are great. We don't really, we squat at the beginning of the year just to set our foundation. I think single leg exercises are huge. And you really have to work the posterior chain. I mean, you have to work the glutes and you really have to work the hamstrings, whether that's, from, single leg deadlifts or, Nordic type of exercises. Those are really, really important.
Dean, what's a Nordic exercise?
So the Nordic, there's the Nordic and then there's the ham glute one, which is almost the same thing. So the Nordic, imagine you're kneeling on the ground and I'm holding the back of your legs and you maintain your body in a really, really straight line and you fall forward towards the ground. Now, most people, a significant percentage of people go down and just, hit the ground and they got to do a push-up. Hopefully they don't crash. That's the first words you want to tell them, but they come down, they push themselves back up. What I really want to see is the athlete come down under great control and then even be able to come back up. That is a really great show of strength. That's really solid.
Good stuff, Dean. So if we're by ourselves, could we just try and secure our feet or something, like underneath something?
Yeah, you can. At our gym, there's a couple of benches that are low enough that if you put your feet underneath it, or you can rig something up that your feet will stay in place and you're pretty much pinned down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I heard on, I'm not sure if it's a Tim Ferriss show, but there was like a trainer at Nike who trained Serena Williams, and he said something to the effect of that the hex bar deadlift is very reflective of like the power output of like tennis players, I guess. Does the hex bar come into your routines that you give out for players?
Yeah, 100%. I love the hex bar, especially if we're in a really strength phase, because it really allows the athletes. It's if you've never used it, I really recommend people try it because it just makes everything so simple. There's nothing on the athlete's back. One of the things with tennis players, they have a hard time with external rotation. So when you have a bar on the back of your neck and you have to get that hand, both hands behind your head to get there. Listen, if I'm sitting tall here and I don't have good external rotation, right away, the first thing I do is I arch my back to get my hands behind the bar. Well, already I'm not in a great position, especially for my lower back. So the hex bar kind of takes care of that. And the young athletes love it. You can really get some serious strength going there and just be like a beast. Yeah, I love it. Sure. I love it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. But so you mentioned that you do squatting like in the beginning of the season. So I guess once you have that like general strength, that's when you go to like specific, and then you kind of like shove aside like the regular deadlifts and squats for the most part.
So yeah, at the beginning, it's twofold. Yeah, it's to build like you just said, like a nice foundation, general strength. It's also to get everybody on the same page. Because when I have 12 to 15 athletes, at the beginning of the year, I'm trying to teach. Even if they've been with me for a few years, I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what's expected of them in terms from performing a specific exercise. I will get new athletes that come into the program, so they have to learn all this stuff too. And it creates a solid foundation.
So it's very simple. I can tell you what my goals were at the University of Miami. Is very simple. Is that you have to dominate. If you're going to have a realistic chance of becoming a professional player out of college tennis, you have to dominate. You probably have to be one of the top couple kids in the country, top 3, top 5, to have a realistic chance. For example, my goals at the University of Miami were to come in and play number 1 as a freshman. It was to win minimum 80% of my matches at number one and win NCAAs and become All-American. I really wanted that as a personal goal. But these were the results that you needed to have a realistic chance that Pierre and both Jay Berger thought to go to the next level and become a professional player. I was close to making the finals. I had match points in my second year at NCAAs, but I achieved all of my goals except for that one in college tennis. And so the way that I was managed and the way that I manage the kids that I train is that we don't skip any steps at all. So if you are, for example, if you are struggling to win, maybe tournaments or make the finals of tournaments in the 14s, you don't play up into the 16s, right? Every single step you have to do well and prove yourself, and then you can go to the next level. And so that's the way that I was managed, and that's the way that I manage my students. There's no skipping steps. And so I did not leave college until I had those specific results to be able to have a realistic chance of becoming a professional.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Todd. I mentioned it a couple times before. I mean, I feel like there are some juniors for sure that, they haven't even won certain levels of tournaments and they're already playing like an age group up, which, as you mentioned, you've got to go through really all the levels and make sure you're battle tested and can win, tournaments before you take, a leap, at least consistently. So that's great there. And Todd, so I mean, you obviously had a great pro career, but I wanted to get into some of the setbacks because you, of course, went through a lot of hardships and then ended up coming back, which is fantastic to see. So I was wondering if you could take us through the eye issue that you had, and when you first found out about that, and then how you were able to come back from that, at least for a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So when I turned pro, I mean, like I said, my dream was to always become a professional player. And so I worked towards that from when I was 6 years old. I mean, I had it in my mind that I am going to be a pro tennis player. I'm going to train like a pro player. I have been around pros my whole life, and I know how they train. I know the results you need, and I love this more than anything. I'm going to be a pro. So, and we can go even before the eye problem I had.
Sure.
When I got out of college, I really didn't have any injuries in junior tennis. I mean, maybe a minor one here and there, but nothing crazy. And so after 6 months, I was the highest ranked player coming out of college. That was the 2003 group after NCAAs. There were guys like Bobby Reynolds and Amir Delic, Rajiv Ram, Jesse Witten, guys like that. Benedict Dorsch, he was a German guy out of Baylor who was a phenomenal player. There was UCLA had a phenomenal player, Tobias Clemens. He was great. There were a lot of great players. There were probably 20 or 30 players at that time that were in college that you knew it was just a matter of time for when they wanted to turn professional. So after my first 6 months, I was about 370 in the world. I had done well. I had won a bunch of futures and done well, and I was winning and losing against guys around 100 in the world. And so I was playing at a really good level very quickly out of college. And so I got to about 370 after my first 6 months. And then after that, I actually tore my rotator cuff.
Wow.
So my father was a surgeon here in South Florida, and he always told me that, Todd, if you ever tear that rotator cuff, your tennis career is probably over. So after 6 months, I was really stressed out thinking, man, my tennis career might be over. I'd done all this my whole life, and I left school and only I had 6 months on the tour, and I tore a muscle, one of the four rotator cuff muscles. I tore it 25%. And so when I went to go do rehab for it, the therapist didn't know if I was going to need surgery or not. So I tried rehab. And I was actually able, after 6 weeks, I was able to come back, and I felt great, and my shoulder was healed. So that was like a miracle.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, but to go back to how I was managed, when I left the University of Miami, I had two different colleges paid for. So when I turned pro, I wasn't risking a lot. And so Pierre had managed this, thank goodness and everything, that when I turned pro and I was ready and everything, my education was paid for already. I could go back to the University of Miami for free, and they honored the scholarship. And not only that, in the state of Florida, there's also something called Florida prepaid that your parents pay for your college for when you're an infant, and then obviously you can take that money and go to a state school in Florida and have your education paid for. So I already had 2 free types of colleges paid for. Wow. So the risk that I was taking was minimal, basically none, right? So I tore my rotator cuff, and that was in the beginning of 2004. I tore my hip twice on the tour. I dislocated one knee. I had to have a surgery in the other knee, and I missed one year. I had to miss the French Open with a hip problem. I had to miss the Australian Open with a knee surgery. My other knee I had a dislocated knee, and it was swelled up and needed to find the right doctor. And then we go to the eye problem. So in 2006, in the summer, I would play a lot of weeks, which usually my schedule was 3 weeks in a row, and then I would take the 4th week off and come home and train and regroup. But in the summer, I would play 8 straight weeks into the U.S. Open. And so I was playing great. I was in the weekend of all the challengers I was playing, and I felt really good. I was confident. And but for some reason, my eye was getting really red towards the end of the day and in the middle of the day, and I had worn contacts at that time. And so I didn't want to get my eye checked until I finished the U.S. Open. So I win my first round match pretty easily in qualifying over this guy, Steve Darcis, who's a great player. Mm-hmm. He got to about 30 in the world. He won ATP titles. And so I beat him pretty handily. And then I had to play Stefan Kubek in the qualifying, which that was a top 20 player. So that's a pretty rough draw. And it rained all day long at the U.S. Open, and they put me on at night. And the lights there are just incredible. Obviously, they're perfect. It's the U.S. Open, and I couldn't see the ball, and it was blurry. And I turned to Pierre during the match, and I said, I can't see. Mm-hmm. And so I lost quickly in 45 minutes or an hour. I got smoked, and I went home, and they diagnosed me that I had some cancer in my left eye, and so that was really difficult. Mm-hmm. And so for the whole rest of that 2006 season, I was putting some chemo drops in my left eye while I was still trying to play the challengers and finish the year out. And they didn't know if the growth would get bigger or hopefully it would go away. But so the growth didn't get bigger, but it didn't go away. So I had to go in for surgery at the end of 2006, unfortunately. And so they had to cut it out, and then they had to put an embryonic membrane in my eye, which is a pregnant woman's membrane, and patch it up a little bit. And so that was tough, and it makes you appreciate so many great things and everything. But, so it was tough, and it was tough to recover from. And but I did. And so I started training again, and I got back on the road, and Pierre training me and everything for 2007. But when I came back to playing, the contact in my left eye, it would move. And so I'd be playing, and guys are serving 140 miles an hour, and all of a sudden my left eye would go a little blurry because the contact was moving. So then I had to go in. Yeah, it's crazy. So then I had to go into LASIK surgery, and that was a great success. I went to one of the best guys here in South Florida who deals with all the athletes and everything, and so I came out with 2015, perfect, better than perfect vision. So that was a success. But in total, my pro career was fun, and I was able to beat a lot of great players. In fact, players that are still playing that the viewers are seeing on TV still. But it was unfortunate that I was hampered by a lot of injuries. And so the tour is tough, and being a little bit of a smaller guy, I'm about 5'10", 5'11", I had to be in tip-top physical condition, and you have to work really hard, and your body can break down. I mean, that's just the reality. So that's really what happened. I had trouble getting through a full year. For the 6 years that I played on the tour, I had trouble getting through one full year of being healthy. So my ranking of 200 in singles on the tour, I basically played half the events of really what I wanted to play. So that was the tough part. But when I was able to play, I was playing great tennis. I had great results in some of the ATP tournaments. I beat some great players in challengers and in ATPs, but unfortunately my body was breaking down, and that's the chance that you take to try to become a great player.
For sure. I mean, it's just incredible stuff. I mean, not only a huge physical burden, but a huge mental burden, maybe even bigger. So I was wondering, through all those injuries, I mean, what are, maybe one or two lessons that you learned about, what it takes to really to come back? Because, obviously everybody gets injuries, amateurs too. And so I think it would be pretty helpful because I do get quite a few emails asking about recovery and all that. So any tips you can have about that or give us about that would be great.
Absolutely. So obviously I look back on my career and now that I'm training, junior players, I look back on maybe some of the mistakes that were made, but at the time I thought they were the right things. Is that I can tell you that when I was super fit when I was in junior tennis, and then when I went to college tennis, the physical training and the trainer, he really didn't know a lot of what he was doing, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So I think it really broke down my body for when I became a professional player. And I was the only professional coming out of the University of Miami when I was on the team there. And so the training that we were doing, the weightlifting and all, and those types of things that you don't really see the players doing that anymore. And so I think it took a toll on my hips, my knees, my rotator cuff. And so the injuries I had were serious injuries. They weren't injuries that were, that you could come back from in a week or two. I was out minimum of 3 months and then needed to train, and then you go back on the road and you're still a little rusty. You're losing some matches to guys that you didn't think you should be losing, and those types of things. And then you get your act together, and then you're playing well again. But I think picking a proper physical trainer and them understanding the body and the mechanics of movement, and not only that, the techniques that are proper for tennis players. And I can tell you that kids that are calling me or parents that are calling me, I take a look in the assessment, and there are many times things that concern me for the long-term health of their son or daughter that could potentially bring on serious injuries. And so that's a concern for me. And so and I tell them honestly, listen, these things are going to need to be tweaked or fixed, because this is a concern that your child may have back problems from this, or elbow, wrist, or shoulder problems from some of the positions that they're in, or some of the techniques that I'm seeing. And then on top of it, when I got off the tour, I got a degree in bodywork. So I finished my college degree, and I also got a degree in bodywork. So I was able to rehab and get to know a lot of the top surgeons and doctors in South Florida. So, and obviously, like I said, my father was a surgeon. He was a very well-respected surgeon in South Florida. So, so that definitely interested me. And so I have a bodywork degree as well. And so, and I also have a team of doctors that if any of the players that I train, if they feel this or that, and I think it could be something maybe serious, they're in the office of one of my really good friends, and he works on a lot of the top athletes in South Florida, and they're seen immediately, and usually they're back training the next day or the day after. And knock on wood, over these 9 years, I've never had a kid have a serious injury ever. And so that's obviously my number one goal, is to make sure that the kids that I'm training are healthy, so that they can keep training hard and keep working at their craft. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot from some of the ailments that I had, and the doctors that I saw, and the bodywork degree that I have, and so fortunately, these kids, they're blessed. They have Pierre and I, but I also have a doctor that they can see.
Well, first of all, I didn't drop out. I flunked out.
Okay.
I lasted 3 months. The dean came to me. He said, "Mr. Bollettieri, you have to dress up like a lawyer." On the third time he said that, I told him a few choice words. But let me say this, that law school is for certain people. my life was to be with people and to be with children and also to do things that no one else ever did. Now, remember that it's very important that those people listening today, people who know they can be a success in something, they do it. Crazy people like Richard Williams, Ken of the Tennis Channel, Nick Bollettieri, we do things that people say can't be done. We are not afraid of failure. And that's why I am where I am today. And when people said Nick can't do something, that's the fuel I used to do it, baby. Okay? So remember, everybody listening to this, come out of your safety box. Try something that you're saying, can I do it? Can I do it? And you know what? If you have this philosophy in time, you'll start doing things that you never thought that you can do.
Thank you so much for that, Nick. And just to reiterate, just really take action. A lot of people, they're just hesitant and they never make any moves. And instead, it's just better to make moves, fail, and learn from it, just like you have, Nick. And speaking of that, question for you: if you could take a time machine right now and talk to your 25-year-old self when you opened that first tennis academy in 1956,
it was North Miami Beach, 1957. On 2 tennis courts, and my pro shop was a Pepsi Cola machine with an umbrella in the middle.
Wow.
My fee was $3 per hour, and my first 2 students were Sueur Smith and Brian Gottfried.
Wow. Pretty good students there. But Nick, if you could take a time machine and actually talk to yourself, back then, what advice would you give a young Nick Bollettieri to speed up his rise through the coaching ranks?
Well, first of all, if I thought what to do, I'd never be where I am. I just did it. That's the type of guy Nick is. If I start giving too much thought to things, I probably won't do half of them. Nick does it, whether it's a failure or success. I just plow into it, and I do it, sir.
Gotcha.
And remember something. This advice I want everybody to listen to. Nick Bollettieri is where I am today because of the team I had. It's not I did it, we did it. No one can do it by themselves. And I've been very fortunate to have many people that have followed me down the road and climbing mountain after mountain.
Great stuff. Thank you. It's so important to have such a great team around you to influence you and give you open critical advice. So Nick, I mean, you're 88 years young now. What is it about tennis that has kept you going throughout the sport year after year? I mean, you see a lot of people, they'll get into something, do it for like a year or less, and then they'll get tired of it. But you've been going for so many years. So what is it about tennis that keeps you going?
I don't think about it, baby. I just do it. I never give thought. If you watch Showtime and Love Means Zero, the 90-minute documentary, you can get it on Amazon. I just did things. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about the consequences, whether I would be successful or failure. If Nick Bollettieri spent time thinking about the things I did, I probably wouldn't have done 99% of those things.
Yeah, that's very sage advice, Nick. Appreciate that. And, listeners really like hearing about, whether it's pro players or great coaches, points that they've hit in their career, like low points, and then how they've come back from it to succeed. So I was wondering if you could maybe speak to maybe a rough patch in your career and then what you did to bounce back from it and become great.
Well, I think that the one thing that I did was taught to me by my father. Back in 1981, I believe it was, Morley Safe is no longer with us, was interviewing a sports psychologist for 60 minutes or 20, I forgot what it was. And the sports psychiatrist said, Nick Bollettieri is crazy. He beats up kids. He doesn't feed them. And we're all Italian. My mother began cursing at the television in Italian.
Sure.
And she said to my father, a very quiet man, youngest man to graduate Fordham Pharmaceutical School. Jimmy, why are they talking about our son this way? And my daddy said, Mary, if you ain't nobody going to talk about you. And whatever they say, you say thank you. And let the things that you do in life do the talking for you. Those words have helped me to be where I am today.
That is so powerful. I mean, they say, if you're not getting criticized, that means you're not doing really anything impactful. So you're always going to have criticizers out there. And I mean, if they're constructive, I mean, then you can learn from it. But if they're just talking trash, I mean, you just pay no attention and don't get mad from it. So I love hearing that. One other thing, Nick, too, as I mentioned, you are 88 years young. You look fantastic. It was really an honor to see you and chat with you for a minute at the U.S. Open a couple weeks ago. And so I read in an article that you have a consistent morning routine. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk to us about what it is and how it helps you start the day off right.
Well, I actually have changed the routine. My first lesson is at 6:30. And I usually give 2.5 to 3 hours in the morning. And then I spend time at my office with the Bollettieri Tennis and Learning Program for the inner city people. And then in the afternoon, I may give a lesson or play golf around 4 or 5. But I do my workout now in the evening at home. And it consists of 10 to 15 minutes of just stretching, 50 to 100 sit-ups, and little 10-pound weights, doing some exercise with my arms. That's it. That's what I do. I don't drink liquor. I haven't drank for over 10 years. I watch what I eat. I think I'm about 150 pounds, 30 waist. And the reason why I stay in shape, how can I travel worldwide giving speeches about taking care of yourself if I have a pot belly and look like I'm 6 months pregnant? I just don't do that. But the one thing that I do is that I even think when I sleep. My mind never stops going. And I think it's very important. And the book, I have 10 books. And by the way, I'm in 13 Hall of Fames. But when I watched Showtime, I said, Nick, sit down with a pad and pen. I don't know how to use a computer. And I spent the last 14 months writing a coach's journey, lessons lived, learned, and shared. And I take you through from the day I was born to where I am today. And one of the interesting chapters is what I learned, what a coach teaches and learns. So I'm going to give you the first coach or the first player that I talked about. There were 52 cards in the deck of cards, and Andre Agassi was the joker. I plead guilty. I should have thrown him out 100 times. And what did he teach me? Look deep into a person's soul. And God said to me, this boy is going to be special. And look what he turned out to be. So I do 35 players like that. And throughout the book, there are pieces by Dr. Jim Lair, Brett Haber, Steve Flink, Judy Murray, Dick Vitale. They open up different parts of the book. And the book is divided into sets. Set 1, set 2, set 3, 6, 4, 6, 5. The last part of the book is the impact I made on people's lives. And then I'm very fortunate. The chapter on leadership and trust. Are you ready? The former commander of the Blue Angels.
Wow.
And he has about 17 pictures. And one of the things he talked about, 2 jets coming at each other at a combined speed of 1,000 miles per hour combined, passing each other by 3 feet. That's trust, baby. and hope he didn't drink too much wine the night before. And he talks about a bombing mission and praying that the flak and the missiles would not hit him. But it's all about, if the mechanics don't keep that F-18 in perfect shape, they die. So the chapter is unbelievable. And throughout the book, my son was the most talented photographer to graduate University of Miami. Gave me about 500 photos that he's taken, because he's been with me traveling for most of my life. And the book, no one has written it. There's a chapter in there about pushy parents versus supportive parents. There's a part of the book, college versus pro. Listen up, everybody. Back in the 80s and 90s, I turned my students pros when they were in diapers. Colin Bassett, Jimmy Arias, Andre Agassi, Aaron Crickstein. Today, I want them in suits and dresses with a couple of years of college. The chances of a professional making today is 1 out of 3,000 make a living. 1 out of 3,000. So we talk about college. And no one, now remember something, I'm not saying I'm the best pro, but there's no other coach in the world that has had the experience of 60 years that I have had. And I take you through 35 of the players: Boris Becker, Martina Hingis, Tommy Haas, Anna Kournikova, Maria. And after each of the players, they say something about me. So the book is going to be fantastic. And I'm very proud to say that Ken Solomon, the CEO of Tennis Channel, they are going to be partners with Nick Bollettieri. So they're going to be my partner in bringing out the book.
Wow. That's wonderful. We love Tennis Channel. Obviously, the podcast is on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, and we're so excited to see the book come out soon. And you mentioned, I mean, obviously you've trained so many great players and from a young age. So I was wondering, there's so many different personalities that you've trained. So how do you get junior players to train hard but also enjoy the sport at the same time?
Well, first of all, IMG doesn't produce champions. IMG prepares a student to reach their ability level in any of the sports that we have here. We now have 9 sports, 600 acres, and I started with 22 acres. But remember something. For a coach, a business person, a parent, get to know your student, baby. Listen to them. Learn about them. Learn their habits. And you know what? Then you know how to react to them. Boris Becker said Nick was a genius. He stands close to you. He looks, listens, sees a little thing, gives a little tip, and walks away. Too many coaches have diarrhea of the mouth. Remember, the more you talk, the more you must prove. But learning who the student is will help you in everything, whether it's in life, a salesman. Learn about that customer.
And Nick, there's coaches out there who will listen to this and think, oh, well, I mean, this is, of course, great advice, but I just don't have the capacity. Like, I have too many students. So do you have any sort of response on how they can still learn about their students, even if they have a lot of them?
Working an extra 4 to 6 hours a day, baby. My day ends about midnight. Anytime I give a lesson, I take time to write an email. When I receive, and my manager receives, Steve Schuler, dozens of emails, and I answer every one of them.
Yeah, he really surprised me. When I got done with college, I went back to South Africa and started playing futures, and he was the only other guy in a city of 3 million people trying to do the same thing. And he was a far better tennis player than I'll ever be. He was about 300 in the world, and we were trained together, and then he had some injuries, and I was coming off a couple of bad losses in Asia. And I called him up and said, "Hey, Raven, I need help with tactics. I don't know what I'm doing." And it was very interesting. It really kind of made me sit down. He said, "Well, Gregg," he said, "in order to execute tactics, you need technique. Yeah, you need the technical skills to execute it." And my whole life, I had really nice, aesthetically pleasing strokes. They looked good, but definitely I had some technical issues that were preventing me from executing certain tactics. So funny enough, we started working on, particularly my backhand, my one-handed backhand, working on something I'd never heard of, an inside-out swing path. We talk about an inside-out target, but actually the swing path, and golfers understand, they should go away from the body as it goes forward and upwards. So we spent a lot of time on that. I was confused a lot because I thought my one-handed backhand had to be something like this, like the reverse of my forehand. And we spent hours and hours and hours and hours with him dropping balls in the alley for me. He was sitting in the chair because he couldn't stand, and just trying to get the ball to rotate with true topspin. Very few people hit that. And it wasn't about flipping the wrist. It was just kind of keeping my arm relatively straight, lifting from the shoulder and swinging inside out. So we spent so much time on that. And then he really helped me with my understanding of my biggest downfall, which is impatience on the court. My whole life I'd heard, Gregg, hit the ball really hard, but you are impatient. But that's a very general statement. And, he was able to really help me identify which shots I should go after and be aggressive on, and which ones I should just rally or just defend on, and where to defend. And to be totally honest, I went through juniors, I played college, Division II college, and you just basically told me, Gregg, when the ball's deep, don't change direction. Okay, I don't know, maybe I heard it, but I didn't hear it. But I thought I'd never heard that before. And he said, wait for the ball that's short, where you can get inside the court, be set up. Then you can go to the open court. Then you can change direction. And, hearing it was one thing, but it was just like an aha moment. But then it took a lot of practice to unlearn that, because, it's so instinctive, just like technique. Your tactics are also these habits we've created. And, if you look at, the greatest game ever played, Federer and Nadal, there's an interview in there where they say it happens so quickly. You have like less than 1.5 seconds to decide. It's almost like a reaction. And you're going to react, make the same decision each time. So we had to go back and do a lot of, we call situational drills, where I had to wait for the right ball and train myself to make the right decision. So those were like the main things that we focused on. And then we cleaned out the volleys, and we worked quite a bit on my kick serve. And then overall, it just helped my tennis IQ, understanding high percentage tennis, something I had no idea about. I thought tennis was hit the ball as hard as you could to the open court, which, if the ball's short and you're in position, that works. But if you're not in position, that court's not open. So that's kind of like in a nutshell. I guess other things too. We worked really hard on my fitness. I've never been in better shape in my life. He got me hooked up with a really good sports psychologist, Clinton Goldweiler in South Africa, just to how to cope with things on the court. So I guess we kind of did an overall overhaul. But those are kind of like the main points, without getting into too much detail.
Oh man, I have a lot that I can unpack from that. So
we could go on.
I'll take a listener question, which is along what I came to mind for me, which is regarding the shot selection. And you did mention change of direction, obviously one of the hardest balls to try and whack it, but what are some other instances of shots where you shouldn't, go for broke on, or that it's unsafe to, hit too aggressively?
Yeah. So, okay, I'll stick to ground strokes and then I'll move on to volleys. But, if you out wide defending, you don't really want to go down the line, because number one is your body is moving. You've got momentum going this way. And if you're trying to go down the line, you've got this angle deflection you've got to overcome. The ball wants to go out. And so it's almost like, you know, you're throwing something out of a moving car. You know, it's gonna move forward as well as sideways. So you're gonna miss most of those balls wide. Also, if you don't hit the ball well enough, you've left the entire court open. So, you know, if you don't get your feet set, I mean, you should be going cross court. This is singles, you know, most of the time. If you're not balanced, you're not set. Also, you know, I found out that when you are behind the baseline and out wide, you should play more centered through the court, because you eliminate the angle that you give your opponent. If you are behind the baseline and you hit an angle, you know, tennis geometry, an angle equals an angle. You hit an angle, you give an angle. So now if you're too far back, you hit an angle, your opponent is stepping inside the baseline in offensive position with now an angle that they can hurt you with. I just learned that from trial and error. Every time I hit an angle from behind the baseline, I lost the point. Now, when it comes down to, you know, approaching the net, and you know, we can see these examples in the Pro Tour. This is something that Djokovic has improved on tremendously. That's understanding your short ball range. And basically, it's understanding that from the time you hit your approach shot, you have enough time, by 1.5 seconds to get to the net, which is about 7 steps. So if you go back and look at Djokovic, you know, a decade ago, he would hit a ball from the baseline and try to come in and get stuck on the service line. The problem with that is you've given his opponent too many angles and he would keep getting past. Now, if you watch him, he's waiting for another shot where the ball's shorter, generally landing inside the service line, where he's inside the baseline by a couple of feet. So now he's taking time away, but he's hitting it from a position closer to the net. So now those 7 steps translates to him getting to that neutral position we talked about, midway between the net and the service line. And if you position yourself right, you eliminate the angle, giving your opponent between 1 to 4 degrees to hit a passing shot. So suddenly your success rate goes way up. But it's just understanding that I've got to wait for a ball that's short enough where I'm inside the court. I've got to move through it, most importantly, so I can get to good position for the first volley. So on the approach shot, waiting for the ball is short enough. Now up at the net, and this is a common one, you know, understanding when it's a defensive volley, when it's an offensive volley. You know, volleys below the net or too far back, you generally don't change direction. We say you hold the line. The reason is because when you hold the line, you are in a better position for the next shot. If you hit a defensive shot to the open court, you actually have to now shift over to the other side, because at the net, you have to position yourself in the same half of the court, covering down the line. So, you know, if you hit like a low volley cross court, you've got to now shift all the way to the other side. So now your momentum is moving one way, plus the ball's sitting up, your opponent's inside the court. They can go either behind you or if you don't cover it, they can go down the line. So understanding when the ball's low or it's defensive, go back at your opponent. When you hit to the open court, you want to be getting into an offensive position close to the net, where the ball's above the net, where you can really stick the ball to the opening. So if they do get there, it's going to be a weaker shot and you can put it away. So, you know, those kind of just like basics with court geometry. But, you know, it makes a world of difference. I think a lot of times what happened to me, I got to the net thinking I had to end it right away. Get to the net with the understanding, hey, I might have to hit 2, 3, 4 volleys if I have to. And just, you know, play the percentages, hit one ball back deep. And if you can hit one ball back deep where it came from, your chances of winning the point go drastically up. So there's just a couple of things there. Hopefully you could follow me on all those.
Just a couple really valuable things. Appreciate that. Love it. And so you mentioned something very interesting that I want to unpack a bit, which is that Raven said that, you know, you need to have the technique before you can implement the tactics and in the bigger picture, the strategies. So, but then you do have another camp that says that, you know, you don't so much need to focus on technique and, you know, just try to implement the strategies and all that. So I was wondering, you know, how do we combine those together? I mean, you know, are you firmly in the camp of what Raven is saying? Because it doesn't make sense, right? That if you want to be able to execute a strategy, but you can't actually hit the shot, then you can't do it. So especially thinking about, you know, the amateur player, Which one should we be concentrating more on first, if we can even determine that?
Well, the thing is, what happens is, and tennis is a lifetime sport. We have an ITF circuit for the 90s and over, and certainly we get into the game, we just want to play, and I totally get that. But then what happens is, I just got an email from a lady who's in our volley challenge saying, she was winning tournaments, but she's plateaued because she didn't have the right fundamentals. So what happens is you get to a certain point where you can beat everybody at your 3 or 3-5 level. The problem is when you go up the next level, you don't have the skills to hang with the next level. So you've placed a ceiling on your improvement. So, that's when, the technical skills become important. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is your point of contact. So, it doesn't really matter what you do. We just say be more efficient because of time. But it's, what are your strings doing, before contact, at contact, and after contact? Now, most players will play from the elbow or the wrist, and they play across their body. When I do this, I have to be like pinpoint accurate, because if I hit the ball late, it's, I'm missing wide. If I hit it early, I'm missing wide as well. Or very often I'm rolling into the net. But if I'm able to kind of play from my shoulder joint and lift, like the pros do, I need to move. This is throwing me off this mirror. But if I lift from my shoulder, my strings go out to the target for a long time. So now I can play the ball a little bit late, on time, and early. So now I'm able to redirect that ball, and most importantly, have consistency in performance day in, day out. Because if I have to be exact, just a bad night's sleep, just a tough day at the office, you're going to be off on your timing. So you want to really lengthen the hitting zone. And that's, to me, if you look at pros, that's one of the things that differentiate their strokes, is that they just have the longest hitting zone. So, they can go from the French Open onto the grass court circuit, and they can adjust because the ball they can adjust to different speeds much quicker than most of us. So definitely, I'm in the camp of you got to have the technical skills to execute strategy, but understand from a recreational level we want to play, so you just got to try to balance those things. And at the end of the day, the more efficient you can make your strokes, the better. The less you do, the better. The less complex the structure.
Love it. Thanks for that, Gregg. I want to get to an audience question regarding volleys. So wrist or no wrist on the volleys from Michael?
Yeah, I would say no wrist. You want to kind of be firm, not tight, but firm, because anytime you start to break your wrist, just imagine this is the ball coming at you, and you're breaking your wrist. See how I'm basically, my racket's moving out of the path of the ball. So it comes back to timing. So if I mistime it, I'm in trouble. But if I time it perfectly, I'm going to be okay. But if you drop the wrist here, you just there's too much to time. And in actual fact, a lot of people are told to add underspin to the volley to help get the ball in, keep the ball low. If you time that correctly, it works. You can get the ball low and all that, but you have to be perfect. But in actual fact, if you hit the ball a little bit flatter, and that's when you play against Raven, his ball moves like this to you. You can't even hit the ball back from the baseline. It's easy for you because you have a long hitting zone. Okay. So like the long hitting zone here, and the flatter ball skids and stays low. Now, the question is, well, the ball's not going to go in. Well, the research tells us if you stand on the service line, hit the ball at 70 miles an hour on a straight line, a foot above the net, 4 feet high, the ball will go in because of gravity. The Bryan brothers, when they did tests on them, could only max out at 53 miles an hour. So if you just send the ball in a straight line, provided your racket's not open, gravity will take over and that ball will go in. So I know there was a long answer, but that's kind of the rationale behind it. You just want to eliminate things that cause excessive timing. Because, I use my wrist this way, or this way. You can see how it makes that very difficult.
Yeah, really much harder to hit solid volleys. Appreciate that there. Just by the way, I keep mentioning Raven, but it was really cool to see him and Michael Venus last year at the City Open, which is my hometown tournament. They won that one. I think it was against Roger and Takao. So really cool.
At the pro level, it's not one size fits all because everybody comes with different strengths and weaknesses. And you just have to be aware of what you do. You should always always play your game. Because one of the things that happens, people always tell me, oh, I hate playing pushers. I hate playing moon balls. And I tell people all the time, the way you beat those people is you got to flip it in your mind. You have to be more patient. You have to be more consistent. You got to be willing to understand you're going to have to hit so many more balls than you're used to. So once you get it in your head first, it's going to be a long day at the office, okay, and they're going to get back your best shots, and then they might get back your best shots, and then your next best shot they're going to get back. Once you psychologically are ready for that, then you're able to deal with it when you play that type of person. But what happens is a lot of coaches and parents, when they're playing these people who are really steady, and I'm mainly talking about 12 and 14 tennis, because that's like people play a lot different, like balls are higher and that stuff. Parents and coaches, be aggressive, take it early, go to the net, be like Batman, Spider-Man, just attack, and you're going to lose every time. You got to pick your spots. It's all situational. When you change your game and all of a sudden you just go in there like you're attacking like ISIS, it's never going to work. So to beat someone who's really, really steady, believe it or not, you got to be more steadier. Then when the table is set and it's a short ball, then it's time to eat.
Gotcha, Rick. So in those situations where we're playing really consistent players, I mean, I guess in a lot of cases too, we may not be as good as that player at being consistent. So then is that a matter of you got to go and practice that out on the court of being consistent and hitting all those balls in practice so that you can eventually beat that type of player then?
Yeah, but the one thing I want to add to all this, the one thing you do got control over, and that's what I obviously tell everybody I coach, whether the kid wins the Orange Bowl or it's a 12-year-old who just wants to see how good they can be, the only thing you got control over is attitude, your attitude. And you're going to be tested. And everybody has a breaking point. And you got this ideal performance state where everybody goes off a little bit, Federer, Rafa, Djokovic, and the lower level players or people who aren't as mentally strong, they go off and they might not ever come back, and you got to understand you got 20 seconds to flip it in your mind that it happened 20 years ago. So you get up there to serve or return, you got to feel great about yourself. You got to feel positive. You got to feel like you can do anything. Because let's face it, so much of this, no matter what level, is mental. It's mental. That's why everybody plays better against better players. Because when you hit the ball in the net against a better player, it feels a certain way. But if you hit the ball in the net against a hamburger who you've beaten every time, it feels different. But the last time I checked, it went into the net. So a mistake's a mistake. So the mental part, and that's what is so amazing. And one of the best role models for everybody nowadays is Sophia Kenin, who I taught from age 5 to 12. And I came right out of the box saying she's the scariest little creature. A lot of this stuff was baked in. And, I knew what was going to happen, but she was always little. So at the end of the day, she's the best role model for every level because her attitude, it's all about the competition. She gets mad, but that mad makes her more determined. And that's an amazing quality. You can't buy it at Walgreens. Okay, you can't cook it, in the oven. It's something that you acquire over time, and it's a habit. But the problem is most people are mentally so weak. They let the situation control them instead of them controlling the situation.
Love it, Rick. And that's great that you mentioned Sophia, because I was talking with Paul Annacone a couple of days ago, and I was asking him about, how can we deal with players, when we're facing somebody who has been in that situation of a Grand Slam final many times, previously, versus you getting there for the first time and then still being able to overcome, that pressure. So give us a little insight into exactly how a player like Sophia was able to defeat somebody who's been there way more times and had way more experience in those situations.
A great question, and I've had this discussion with the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, when she was doing the Australian, I probably did like 30 interviews. Even though her dad coaches her, does an amazing job. They have a great relationship. This started early on, and it was a gift, okay? I could see mentally this kid's very different, okay? Forget cutting the court and the geometry of the court and taking the ball off the rise. Mentally, it was already baked in. And I've had other people like that. Roddick was unique, Sharapova, everybody. That's the one common thread of all these great players I've had. Mentally, they kind of had it. You usually acquire that later. Like I felt Serena got that later on as a junior. But with Kenin, the first time she plays in the finals, you got to understand, I think we should back the truck up a little bit when she played Barty. Australian Open, Barty's home turf. Everybody probably wanted Barty to win except Sophia's dad and maybe the people from Fila. So, and she flips it all around and takes it to her advantage. And you can tell people this and you can be satisfied. Hey, you did great or whatever. She expected to win, not hope to win. She expected to win. And then when she got to the finals, okay, against Muguruza, she expected to win. But that doesn't, everybody hopes to win. She expected to win, or she thought she was going to win. She was supposed to win in her own mind. But this starts long ago. Sure, you might be able to, get lucky and pull it off your first time there. But look how she competed. It was like she was oblivious to the pressure. And this is what I talked about when she was 5, 6, and 7. I could see it then. And I said she'd be top 10 in the world by 20 and win many Grand Slams. I think she can win 12. I'm serious. Mentally, she's not going away. She's like a mosquito, your worst nightmare. And because she has other attributes too. She cuts the court, the geometry of the court. She's a wizard. She's like Hingis in many ways, except even better in some areas, I feel. But she is probably one of the best competitors I've ever taught. But she was like that at a young age. How you get it, how much of it has to do with environmental, Russian, who knows? I just saw something unique at a young age. So you got to remember, this was always there at 12, 14, 16 when she was one of the best juniors, except she was a peanut. She was little. So how you do that, listen, she could have went away. You make errors, people are against you, you think you're blowing it. She's human, but look how she handles pressure. When she loses, she gets more determined. And you could see it by throwing down the ball. She's just so competitive. And when you have that crazy thirst for competition, like no other, you handle pressure amazing. And right now she's 4 in the world and the #1 ranked American, and no one's more proud of her than Rick Macci. And she actually trains at the academy with her dad and a hitting partner.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure you're just so proud.
Great kid.
Yeah, so good for the country too. I think a lot of people just from listening to you talk, even for those couple minutes, are really inspired. And a lot of them probably say to themselves, you know what, I don't have this sort of, ability at the moment to expect that that I'm going to win every time, but I want to start to develop it and work on it. Now I'm really motivated to do this. So what advice would you have for us who want to gradually get to that point where we're expecting to win most, if not all, of our matches?
Great question. And it's the hardest thing to do. And there's actually a whole chapter in my book, Macci Magic, where I called Flip It. And, greatness, it doesn't matter. LeBron, Jordan, Kobe, it doesn't matter. They have the ability to flip things. They turn pressure into their best friend. If everybody's booing them, they can, they don't take it for what it is. It's not black and white. If it's left, it's right. If it's black, it's white. They think the exact opposite. If it's really, really hot outside, if you think it's hot, it just got hotter. If it's really, really windy and you think it's windy, you probably think it's a hurricane. You got to love the wind. The wind's your best friend. So at the end of the day, it takes a strong individual to be able to flip things in their mind. And so you got to start somewhere, because most people in life, forget tennis, they let things control them instead of you controlling the situation. And in tennis, where you don't have anybody to blame, you don't have a partner, you don't have teammates, it's like you boxing, you know what I mean? And so you mentally have to be so strong. So the first thing you got to do is understand it's a choice. The next thing, it's a challenge. And then you got to be able to flip it in your mind. If you hit 3 double faults in a row, I don't think you're thinking, man, oh man, my serve is great. You're going to think the sky is falling and I did better yesterday. But most people are going to think, what's the matter with my serve? Or if you get ace 3 times in a row, I don't think you go over to the ad court and go, okay, I got him now. You're going to be feeling like, the guy's Superman. But this is what I mean by flipping it. Because the last time I checked, no matter what level you play at, it's 1 point at a time. And it's mind control. I'm telling you, it's mind control. And the best of the best, this is what they do. They're playing a game within a game within a game. So the club player, that's why so many times you see people, club players, even juniors, are going, wait a minute, I have a better forehand, I have a better backhand, I have a better serve, and I just saw 6-2, 6-2. How has that happened? Well, the other guy's always set, getting the ball back. He's running, sweating, shutting his mouth, and just competing. And that trumps the other stuff to some degree. Now, at the highest level, you need a package. But my advice to anybody is get a better attitude, be positive. Even if you're down 6-0, 5-0, can you be Mr. Positive? Yes. But most people say no. Most people say, well, I have a great attitude when I'm winning. Well, come on. Everybody's happy on their birthday. I want you to be happy when things are going against you. And if you can look at it like that, and that's what I call flip it, you got to look at things the exact opposite. But if players would listen to that advice, game changer.
Awesome, Rick. Love it. It's amazing stuff. What types of things can we do to actually, drills, exercises, or anything like that we can do to also further build our just mental toughness and help us realize that we can overcome tough things that are presented to us?
Another great question. The problem is people, they'd rather physically do things. The best thing you got to do is visualize. Okay, the best of the best, they have amazing imaginations. Okay, but no one likes to do this stuff because it's boring. But you got a lot of time right now. So why don't we just take, 45 minutes a day and visualize. See yourself hitting great shots. See yourself hitting 20-ball rallies cross court. See yourself hitting aces. Add color. Add the crowd. Make it real in your mind. Because when you put it into the subconscious, it's amazing how you learn. And I know people think that's all hocus pocus. It's not. The best point guards in basketball, they love to trick you. Okay, all these people that do great things, their imagination's unreal. And so that's one thing that I tell a lot of my students. Plus, if you can slow it down in your mind, or you've been there, done that, when you actually get to that place in a match, your mind will feel comfortable because you've already been there. A perfect example, and I'll use this as that's happened a long time ago. Venus was playing Spurleia. People might not remember the famous bump incident when Venus first made her debut, I think at the Open. She played Spurleia, and it was 6-all in the breaker, and Venus went 8 feet off the court on center court and hit the most amazing two-handed angle cross court when Spurleia's at the net. Then the next point, I think Spurleia double faulted, and Venus wins, the tiebreaker third. And they interviewed, they go, that was an amazing shot. You were 8 feet off the court in the tiebreaker. How did you hit that shot from so far off the court? She goes, well, ever since I was little, I was taught to run for every ball, and I've been in that place many times. Think about it. At your normal tennis court, you're about at the side fence. So the fact that she's been there, even though it's a physical thing, because I tell all the kids to run for every ball, she was been there and done that. So when she was there, that moment in time, it brought back to a place she's been at. But if you've never been there, like trying to drive somewhere, you're not going to be as comfortable. And I used to tell all the kids, listen, someday you're going to be in this position. So practice it in your mind or practice on the court. Even if you're 5 feet off the court, practice hitting shots from there. Because someday, somewhere, somebody is going to hit the ball there. And when you're there, I'm not saying you're going to make it, but you'll be more comfortable.
Excellent, Rick. Appreciate that. And so in order to help us, I mean, obviously it helps a lot to surround ourselves with great people, great coaches like yourself. So what advice do you have for players, competitive amateur tennis players mainly, on how to find somebody and also what types of people we should find to help surround ourselves with greatness and with that attitude to be able to develop it in ourselves?
A lot of great questions today. No, I think it depends on what you need. Do you need technical help? That becomes a slippery slope because everything is in the eye of the beholder. When I did the ATP forehand, little did I think it'd have over 2 million views on YouTube when I did that with USPTA.
Yeah, so one guy who actually was going to focus on his doubles after that, didn't make his flight back from Turkey in time, so he didn't bother signing in. I only found this out after, when I rang up and asked what time I was playing. I didn't expect. I was 770 in the world, and normally the cut was around 1,000. And so Richard Joyner said, "Marcus, you were last in." I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah." But about an hour before, he said, "It's looking close," and I was like, "Oh, what?" But I never thought I wouldn't get in. And then when the stars align like that, you just think, "Sheesh, that was lucky." So I got last in. I was actually coaching some like 6-year-olds at the local tennis club to me that day before I signed in. So I had to go down to London that night and stay at a friend's flat. And I hadn't hit a ball on grass. I just played Germany the week before on the clay. So I was playing tennis, but I was happy. I was relaxed. I stepped onto the grass. We got a 10-minute warm-up, and then I pre-qualified. Played 3 guys, Bambridge, O'Mara, and then Joe Salisbury. That's who I beat to pre-qualify. So pretty good tennis player, especially on grass. And then I was over the moon when I pre-qualified because I thought I was done. I was looking at jobs in Philadelphia the year before because it's a dream of mine to move to America. I'll do it one day, but I was going to do it then. And then obviously I was always planning on signing in because it's Wimbledon.
Sure.
And then after I beat Salisbury, I was quite emotional actually. I sat there in the chair like, whoa, I've got another Wimbledon qualies. But never in a million years was I thinking about qualifying. Like the night before qualies, I went to Coldplay with my family and Coldplay concert at Wembley. Had a few pims, just super chilled. Like wanted to win, but just happy to be there.
Yeah.
I don't believe, I'm not going to sit there and be all inspirational and go, no, I wanted to fight for every point or win, qualify and win Wimbledon. I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking, let's see the draw and I'll try and win that match.
Yes.
And I'll try and win the first point in that match and the second and the third. And that's how I qualified for Wimbledon. If I had all these massive, stupid goals, there's no way I would have become there's no chance I would have done what I did had my mindset not been focused on the now.
100%. I mean, that's where a lot of people go wrong. They're thinking about winning like a much bigger goal sometimes. Well, they're focused on winning instead of like what you said, you're focused on like winning the next point and the next point and the next point. That's how you build up without, your mind going crazy and getting nervous and whatnot, even though nerves are natural, but I'm sure they fade away for you, a little bit after the match starts.
They're good. I mean, nerves are good.
Yeah.
Nerves are good, but not to the point where, for me, it's if I have expectation in myself or if people around me expect things, that's when I don't do well.
Yeah.
I just train very hard, and you're almost playing an autopilot. You've trained so many hours a certain way. You don't think too much. You go out there and play your game. That was it.
Yeah, exactly.
I trusted, as you say, I trusted my training, and things clicked. And a couple of times I played Wimbledon qualies before. I had some awful matches.
Yeah.
I made second round when I was 18 qualies, beat Amir Delic, who was made third round of Aussie that year. And the next round I played horribly against Stoppini. Then I played Wimby qualies a few years later, and I couldn't hit over a forehand. I just become. Someone said to me, "Oh, that's like the easiest draw you've got." The guy hates grass, and I couldn't play. I lost 3-3 because I was thinking and getting consumed by crappy little comments around me.
Yeah. That's huge. That just underscores how important the mental mindset is, So it's very interesting, because you go from pre-qualifying, still great players, but then you play qualifying, you win that, and I'll kind of hold off on the story, but I'm curious about like the different levels, let's say, between pre-qualifying and qualifying players. Like, how much difference is there really in between those players' games, and how much did you have to raise your level of play or strategies or anything like that?
Well, my first round qualies, I was 6-1 down in 17 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a shock, but I do think that when you play better people, you up your game. But yeah, the standard is a massive difference. I mean, the guys I beat are good players. They're all doing very well in doubles now, but they're winnable matches. It wasn't like a huge shock when I beat them. It wasn't the way they play. Like, you're always going to get chances that I don't know. It's all about time with tennis. Like the better players don't double fault at 30, or they take the ball half a step earlier. They put the ball an inch closer to baseline than someone else does. It's not like if you're watching them hit, you wouldn't go, "Oh, he's better than him." But over the course of an hour and a half tennis match, it's just the little things. But you can really feel the pressure when you're playing better players.
So
and it's a big step up. It's more than junior to futures, I'd say, from pre-qualies to qualies. Huge difference. From qualies to main, if you get a seed in the main draw, it's tough. But like guys that are 90 in the world obviously are much better than guys 110 in quality.
Right.
Qualifying, actually, the 3 matches I played in qualifying were tougher than my first round.
Even though Berankis was top 60.
It was 54, but I just beat Rublev and Medvedev.
Yeah. Pretty nice wins.
Pretty nice wins. Like they were better players even then. So when you beat 2 guys that good and you keep your level high, it was kind of a step down. But I'd managed my nerves really well against Berankis. Like I got myself in some sticky situations. I got out of them well.
Yeah.
It was all about holding my nerve and hitting my spots and playing my way. Because I was playing that well. I sound arrogant saying it now, but this is how I was playing. I was just beating those 2 guys. So Berankis, yeah, winnable.
Sure.
Winnable. Nowadays, like, forget it. But right then, in that moment, you've got to accept whatever moment you're in and mentally prepare for your next match.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So you were basically, like, you mentioned how there were these little things, maybe hitting the ball a little bit deeper, the half step. So, like, I guess once you started playing those players in the qualifying rounds, then you basically kind of realized you had to do that as well. So then you just kind of automatically had that gear there because of your training, I guess. And that's how you were able to match them and even, exceed. Is that it?
Yeah. Another thing my coach said was train above match intensity. So when you come to the match, it's not too much for you. So we were taking the ball. We were doing some ridiculous tempo drills. 3 minutes on cross court, 100% intensity sprint, and then come back. We were doing some ridiculous things.
Damn.
But actually, when in a match, I was never like at the backs, like struggling for breath or running out of ideas or being blown off the court because. Sometimes I'm playing with 2 guys who are running me side to side and double score.
Yeah.
It was never a case like if someone was going to beat me, they'd be better at tennis than me. They'd be more skillful, or dictate a bit better, or take their chances on that day. I wasn't going to lose through lack of fitness or tempo.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's very interesting. Rublev and you said, was it Medvedev? You said
Medvedev. I think to qualify him for. Yeah.
Yeah. So those players, I mean, especially now anyways, they hit super hard and seems like flat as well, and probably back then. But I was curious, like, what was the game plan for them? Because I know, like, from watching some of your matches, it seems like you have quite a dynamic game and great hands, and sometimes you'll surprise them with certain drop shots and whatnot. So what was your plan? Like, what worked for you against that style of big hitter?
I was serving very well. I was volleying very well. Excuse me. So for me, I was very simple in my head. Was keep holding, vary your serve, hit your spots. Vary serve volleying. Don't come in all the time. Don't give them any patterns on my service game. And on theirs, especially Rublev, was try and get the ball in play on the serve. Hang in there and see what I can do. Especially at the start, you want to keep as many balls in play as you can so you can see what patterns they're going to play. So it was very simple in my head. And as the match goes on, you read them a bit. By the end of the Rublev match, I had him serve volleying. Like he was really Medvedev different. I was 5-1 down. I actually lost the first set 6-3. But I was 5-1 down. I really had to reevaluate what was going on.
Yeah.
Like I stopped serve volleying so much. I wasn't playing in the corners. I didn't play very pretty tennis to win that one, but I had to.
Yeah. Gotta do what you gotta do. So you were down 5-1 in the first?
Down the middle. 5-1 in the first, and then I had 5-3 break point. He ended up holding, but I somehow managed to stick in that because he was just putting balls past me, angles, return winners, serving bombs.
Yeah.
I remember thinking like, last round college, this sucks. Imagine getting your ass kicked last round college.
Yeah. But
and then something, and by the end, I was actually so in control. I was serving for the match at 5-2 in the fourth. Like I felt like I couldn't lose points, whereas 2 hours before I was, he was super good.
Yeah, awesome. I mean,
not just power and tempo, but like the angles he'd come up with, his reach, his accuracy. I was blown away by the first few games there.
Awesome. Well,
but luckily he was a bit more fragile when I played him than he is now.
Still an amazing win.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I played great. Played really well because to get to the last round, he was winning like 6-2, 6-2, 6-1, 6-1.
Yeah.
He was chopping good players. So the next year, I think he beat Stan first round.
Yeah.
Or second round. So I think he was good. That was a hell of a win.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. And so, just want to talk a bit more about the win against Barranquilla before we go to play, playing Roger, which is amazing. With Barranquilla, so how did you deal with the pressure? Was the pressure like any different? I mean, it wasn't. Okay. So you were just basically one at a time.
Like I was happy and like I wanted to go and get stuck into the match in my head. Obviously, I'm quite pessimistic. I thought I was like, I want to make a match of this. I can beat him, of course I can, but I don't want to turn up at Wimbledon and lose 1-2-1.
Right.
Because I played him when I was 14. I lost 2-0 like in super quick time. He was a hell of a junior. So for me it was like I'd always, when I was about to quit and go to America, I was really upset that I never got to play men's Wimbledon. Because actually, I will go off topic here a bit. A few years before, when I was at the LTA, we lost in qualies, me and my partner, but we got in as a lucky loser. But I was told to go to Norway and play this tournament, even though I said, look, I want to rest. I want to chill out this week. They were like, no, you're going to go to Norway. And I got a call in Norway from the referee's office saying, Marcus, you got in.
Wow.
My partner was in London.
Man.
And so my heart sunk. I was like, what? I would have played men's doubles at Wimbledon, but still playing at Wimbledon, main draw,
Man.
So when I'm playing Barranquilla, I'm buzzing to be there.
Yeah.
Absolutely buzzing.
Yeah.
Like the happiest man in the building.
Yeah, icing on the cake, yeah.
So, well, as I had my coach there, I called him up saying, look, I qualify for Wimbledon because I wasn't playing at the time. So he was up in Huddersfield with a new job. I was like, do you want to be my coach for Wimby? He was like, hell yeah.
No, sorry.
I think he was at Wimbledon before I was.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he obviously prepared me for my match. And then I had a plan, and then I went and won.
Yeah. Well,
so yeah, as I said, I gave myself the best chance.
Yeah. Well, if you remember, what was that plan? Just curious.
Again, very simple with me and my serve. With him, God, you're taking me back now. There's only 2 or 3 things. I think my coach said he likes to, when he runs around his backhand, he likes to go inside out and then inside in. It's like patterns.
Interesting.
He says, he gets a bit tight sometimes on his second serve, hits the ball very flat, backhand better than forehand, blah, 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 stuff like that. But it was more about, he hit with me before my match, was the physical preparation.
Very cool.
But yeah, if you give me too many instructions, my head explodes.
Yeah, I mean, that you're not alone. I think that's a big thing too, as you know, with coaching as well, when you're coaching people, players, and you give them like too many things and it's better to just focus on a couple things. So smart of your coach. So, yes, obviously we want to get into the match that you played, second round, Wimbledon 2016 against Roger Federer. I mean, what were your emotions before the match, and then how did you try to, maybe if you felt like you needed to kind of calm yourself and whatnot to get ready?
Honestly, I was in such a good headspace that all I thought was, it's pretty cool. You get to play Federer. I was excited to play on centre court, and I knew it would be a big match, but I was like, it's pretty cool. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, how am I going to win?
Nice.
I got out there. I think I won like 21, 22 points in the first set, but lost 6 love.
All right, that is a wrap on episode 200 of the Tennis Files podcast. If you're still with me, then wow, big applause. You are a true tennis fanatic and passionate tennis player, and I really appreciate you listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed it, if you think that the Tennis Files podcast is bringing you good value, then I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review for the Tennis Files podcast for these 200 episodes or whatever amount you've listened to, just to let me know how and what you think about the show. I would really appreciate it. So just go to tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts or leave a review in your favorite podcast app. And that would be fantastic. I know you've been listening for a while, so let me make the outro more brief than usual, I suppose. But I'll leave you with a quote still, and this one is actually by Unknown, so I'm not sure who wrote it, but the quote is, "Don't bury your failures, let them inspire you." Fantastic. All right, well, with that, I again thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. Wishing you great health and happiness and some tennis too.